everyone. Welcome to this regular session of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. We're also sitting as all special districts. This is a November 19, 2018, 9 a.m. meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order, and the first item in the agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask Supervisor Pancrase to lead us in the pledge.
Will you all please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first item in the agenda is call to the public. Call to the public is held for the public's benefit to allow individuals to address issues within the board's jurisdiction. Board members may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to Arizona revised statutes, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further discussion and a decision at a future date. You know, it's really better if you fill in one of these forms if you want to talk about any of the items that are in the agenda. Actually, when we have zoning cases and their public meetings, you don't need to fill in a form, but I do see that there's two individuals that fill in a form. One is for rezoning case number 1811, and the other one is case number 1. I guess it must be the same thing. I'm going to take those up when the item is called. Anyone else that wants to address the board, you don't have to, necessarily fill in something, or, you may want to make an announcement or something. So, Supervisor McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For staff, I read in the newspaper this morning that the city of Yuma is looking at an ordinance to cover loads for debris and, sand and all of that type of stuff. I would really prefer that we look at that issue and make it countywide. So it's not a hodgepodge. And then secondarily to that, I have a question of legal. If we were to pass such an ordinance, does that cover the municipalities by a county ordinance?
That's a discussion.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're on call to the public, so we can't break into discussion on these items, but I can address that with you separately after the meeting.
Right, thank you very much. Sure, of course.
The key is to ask him in terms of, would you please later on?
Yeah, I got
to
that.
say,
Luckily, I don't have to
don't ask him a question, just give him a little direction for the future type of thing. All right, anything else from a member of the public or any of the other board members? This item, I can always open this item up if need be, during the meeting. I'll leave it open. So the next item in the agenda is presentations, proclamations, and appointments. During this segment of the agenda, board members may discuss the presentations and proclamations and may announce appointments to the Yuma County Planning and Zoning Commission and the Yuma County Board of Adjustment. No legal action will be taken. As a point of clarification, there are some appointments that have to be made by the board as a whole, but there's other ones that can be made by individual board members, and they can be made at any time during this part of the agenda. So just in case. Are there any appointments for any of these boards or commissions? If not, then we'll move on to the item number 1 on presentations, which is a presentation of the county line by Yuma 77, the Yuma County Government Channel.
It's the one day kids want to be in court. We'll take you there. It was a big event for juvenile court from Big Mountain, all to benefit kids at Hope. And local law enforcement trained to improve survivability of victims during an active shooter event. These stories and more, this is your County Line. Every year, loving families open their hearts and homes and adopt children throughout the county. And every year, the county celebrates these forever families to raise awareness. Recently, at the Yuma County Juvenile Justice Center, the county helped to celebrate National Adoption Day. Family and friends gathered for food, music, and fun while they waited for their adoption. Additionally, the county set up booths to educate and assist parents and fosters. Inside the Justice Center, judges and lawyers united children with their adopting parents to form a forever family. Often dealing with negative court proceedings, the court staff explained the significance of this event.
Most of the time when you come to court, there's one side that's happy and the other not so much. But here, on National Adoption Day, it's a day of joy for everyone concerned. The children have awaited many times months to be adopted, and the adoptions range from grandparents to aunts and uncles to relatives to friends, many foster families, and I'm always amazed at the number of persons who step up to adopt these children.
National Adoption Day is geared toward raising awareness about the plight of children without families. For more information about foster or adoption programs, please call 341-1159. Have you ever made a mistake you regretted? How about one that you ended up really being proud of? That's the case for Juvenile Court Director Tim Hardy when he innocently used some music for a video.
We had posted a lip sync challenge and used a song that was called Lean on Me. Facebook staff notified me that I did not have the rights to the music, and because of that, they're going to have to mute it. And then they also sent a notice saying how you could get rights to the music, and one of those was to contact the band. I reached out through Facebook Messenger and found that Big Mountain had a Facebook page, reached out to them, and the next morning I woke up and it's kind of like a Christmas present, and the president of the band, he had seen the video. He said he liked it. He looked like it was in good taste. So he forgave me for posting it without his permission and also gave permission to continue using it.
And not only did Big Mountain allow them to continue using the song for their video, they agreed to come to Yuma and put on a benefit concert for the Kids at Hope program.
Kids is a beautiful thing to rally around. We all know how tough it is, how difficult it is to get through, especially adolescent period of life. So many pitfalls, so many dangers. And hey man, you know, when it comes to kids, there is no politics. We gotta come together, we gotta do what's right for the community.
The concert was held at Desert Sun Stadium in Yuma. The crowd enjoyed Big Mountain's energy as they played many of their hits, and they were treated to other bands as well. Everyone felt the energy, and Big Mountain made the event a huge success. If you're interested in hearing more about the Kids at Hope program, just reach out to Tim Hardy at the Juvenile Justice Center by calling 210-4000. We've covered an active shooter training before. You know, where law enforcement trains to enter a situation and stop the bad guys. But what about the wounded? Recently, the Emergency Management Office brought training to local first responders to teach skills during an active shooter incident that specifically focus on rescuing people and improving survivability of victims.
It's extremely important for them to train together because we all know that when something like this happens, we're going to reach out to all our local, state, and federal partners for assistance. And if they train together, they know what we're all working on, we're all on the same page, and hopefully for a better outcome at the end.
The 3-day course was not all practical application. The agencies attending the training spent 2 days in the classroom preparing for the scenario. In this spotlight, we give you an inside look at the Facilities Management Department, who is responsible for inspecting structures and equipment throughout the county and responding with the necessary resources to ensure safety to employees and the public.
The mission of the Facilities Management Department for Yuma County is to provide quality maintenance services in a timely manner to all of our county-owned facilities. Really what I call the backbone of our department is our maintenance division, and they're out doing all the routine and preventive maintenance measures on our facilities. And that includes responding to emergency work orders when something breaks, replacing lights and things, just normal wear and tear that need to be replaced. And then we have our electronic and security systems division, and they oversee the work that we do with our security cameras, DVRs, door access control systems, fire alarm system and monitoring, security systems and monitoring. And then we have our HVAC division, and they perform regular maintenance and repairs to our 4 central plants. They also oversee maintenance on over 600 HVAC units, so they're moving around from facility to facility working on those. Our largest division is the custodial division. I think a lot of people don't really realize that keeping the facilities clean to a certain level is a part of preventive maintenance, that it extends the life of the facilities themselves, so what they do is really valuable. And then our last division is our project management division, and we oversee construction and remodel. Anything that's happening in a county-owned facility is managed through that division. It's very important that we provide a good service to our more than 1,000 employees, and we're spread out. Our facilities consist of over 1 million square feet of building space, and we have more than 40 buildings located on more than 30 different sites across the county. So we're moving from place to place constantly.
Please visit yumacountyaz.gov for more information on the county's Facilities Management Department. Hi, my name is Tricia, and this is your Health Watch. Diabetes is a chronic disease that affects how your body turns food into energy. Blood glucose is your main source of energy and comes from the food you eat. Insulin helps glucose from food get into your cells to be used for energy. Sometimes your body doesn't make enough or any insulin, or doesn't use insulin well. Glucose then stays in your blood and doesn't reach your cells. Over time, having too much glucose in your blood can cause health problems. Type 2 diabetes can be prevented. Diabetes prevention starts with making lifestyle changes, including eating healthy, becoming more physically active, and losing a few extra pounds. The Yuma County Public Health Services District offers a free diabetes education class in both English and Spanish. Classes are scheduled regularly at different times and locations throughout the county. Call 928-317-4540 today to sign up. This is all for now. Until next time, stay healthy, Yuma. We want to take a moment to recognize the amazing work being done at the Yuma County Superior Court. You may not realize it, but the Yuma County Law Library, along with the Self-Service Center, are designed to help those trying to weave their way through the legal process. Attorneys use it, but it's also for the public. They do an amazing job, so much so that recently they were awarded the Strategic Award for Improving Court Processes to better serve the public. This is the first time Yuma County has received an award for improving court processes. Congratulations to all involved for setting the standard for the rest of the state to follow. We'd like to thank you for joining us for County Line. If you'd like to watch past episodes, log on to yumacountyaz.gov/VOD. And don't forget, you can join us on Facebook. We'll see you next time.
I keep waiting for that Vulcan, thing to happen, but it never happens. All right, that takes care of the presentation of Channel 77, the county line. And the next item is item number 2, which is the proclamation proclaiming December the 1st, 2018 as World AIDS Day. And that proclamation will be read by Supervisor Porches.
Thank you. Proclaiming December 1st, 2018 as World AIDS Day, whereas the global spread of HIV infection and AIDS calls for a worldwide effort to increase communication, education, action, and prevention to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS, and whereas the World Health observes December 1st each year as World AIDS Day to expand and strengthen the worldwide effort to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS, and whereas in the 2017 report on global AIDS epidemic, the precise numbers of people living with HIV, people who have been newly infected or who have died of AIDS are not known. Achieving 100% certainty about the numbers of people living with HIV globally will require testing every person in the world for HIV every year. This is logistically impossible and poses poses ethical problems. Over 1 million Americans are estimated to living with HIV worldwide, and estimated 36 million people are living with HIV. And whereas World AIDS Day is time to celebrate the many lives saved by HIV prevention and treatment programs, it also serves as a reminder that we all must do more as individuals, communities, and world citizens to fight the spread of HIV and AIDS. Now, therefore, Marco A. Antonio Reyes, Chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors, hereby proclaim December 1st, 2018 to be World AIDS Day in Yuma County, and urges the public to participate in activities to increase understanding of HIV/AIDS as a global challenge, and to continue joint efforts to prevent the further spread of HIV/AIDS. In witness whereof have set my hand and affixed the official seal of the Board of Supervisors done at Yuma, the county seat, this 19th day of November 2018. Marco Antonio Reyes, Chairman of the Board.
Thank you, Supervisor. Diane Gomez from the Health Department, Director of the Health Department is here.
Good morning, Chairman Reyes, members of the board. Thank you so much for the proclamation. We've been working on this issue worldwide and locally, expanding our prevention and education efforts. And I'm happy to say that over the years, through prevention and increase in prevention, outreach, early testing and identification, and of course the advocacy, has led to research, and there's been amazing medical advances. So as where once that was a diagnosis, so that was literally a death sentence, now people that have been diagnosed can live long lives with proper care and management. Thank you.
Right. Is anyone here with you to accept it?
Yeah, I have staff.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I want to prepare.
All right. Oh, I get to hold it?
Ladies.
All right. Thank you.
Your girls.
I always have this weird feeling with Supervisor McLeod next to my wallet here.
Thank you
Okay.
so much. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great work you guys do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. We are giving flu shots.
I already got mine. And my pneumonia.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, we gotta get one. I keep forgetting that.
I keep forgetting.
In the goal.
Stay healthy.
You guys bring flu shots?
Not today.
Could have run on.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I'm gonna put mine on.
Now, the next item, do you want us to not take any action? So there will be no presentation? No presentation? All right, then we're gonna skip and take no presentation on item number 3. That takes care of one dreaded PowerPoint presentation. And we move on then to the consent calendar. The consent calendar is where items are listed under this agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. Before we go into that, we forgot to actually announce that Supervisor Simmons couldn't attend the meeting, and, you know, send him our regards, you know, our condolences for the death of his father. So I
Yeah,
just
the
wanted to
passing
make
of
sure
his
that
father.
we, you know, we record that. Okay, so now we're in the consent calendar. And I was told that there was one item to begin with that we were not gonna discuss. We'd take no action. It's item number 10. Is that correct? So everything else is up for motion. Are there any discussion or not discussion? Is there a motion to go ahead and approve the consent items as listed, 1 through 11, with the exception of number 10, unless somebody else wants to pull another one?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There's been motion and second to approve the consent calendar, items 1 through 11, with the exception of item 10, in which there will be no action taken. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Right, motion carries, and we move on to the Housing Governing Board. And we have a consent calendar. Is the housing member here?
She
Oh, there
is.
she is. Oh, well, you're gonna sit where Supervisor Simmons sit, right there.
Yeah.
Where's the,
Hi.
where's the, oh, you're.
Good morning. Nice to see you. Yeah.
Ahora sí, tener la confianza, pero eso porque hace mucho cuidado. Okie dokie. Okay, we have the housing, we're now sitting as the Housing Governing Board, and it's a consent calendar. The following items are listed under the consent agenda and will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and or action. Do we want to, we have one item for consent. Does anybody want to pull it for discussion, or shall we continue with it on the consent agenda? If there is no discussion on this item that is requested by the board member, then I'll entertain a motion to approve consent item number 1, which is a budget amendment resolution number 1957, increasing fiscal year 2018-2019 budget authority by $83,647 in the Housing Department Low Rent Public Housing Program, and another budget amendment resolution number 1958, increasing Housing Department's fiscal year 2018-2019 authorized positions by 1 full-time employee. Want to make a motion?
Motion.
So moved. So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
The motion and second to approve consent item number 1 as presented. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Thank you. This was a pretty quick item. Thank you very much. You know, I'm sure that probably wasn't worth the hours that we waited for it, huh? Thank you, and thank you for your service. You know, just in case we don't get to see you before Thanksgiving.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes. The next items are on the discussion calendar. The discussion calendar is where action items are, and we will open each of the following items separately for discussion and action as appropriate. The first item is the County Administration's Grant Division, Administration and Grants, discussion and direction to staff on proposed revisions to the owner-occupied housing rehab program policies and guidelines. We will have a PowerPoint presentation, which will be given by staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nancy Nye with County Administration. As you know, we received some additional funding for housing rehab to continue the program. So we felt this will be a good time to bring back to you the policies and guidelines and get some directions as to any policy changes that you want to make at this time. Just a reminder, purpose of the owner-occupied housing rehab program is to eliminate unsafe conditions for families, so it's improve their quality of life, and it also preserve the housing stock and improve neighborhoods, and overall helps the county in ensuring our housing stocks are in place. Funding that we've been receiving for the program mainly are HUD funding, Community Development Block Grant, the regional funds, State Special Project, and Colonial funds are 2 of the competitive funding that we get. And this year we're awarded the Colonial funds from the Department of Housing for the Avenue B and C area. The other funding source that we receive is the Home Investment Partnership Program. And there's 2 different funding sources that we go through, and they're both competitive, but the Arizona Department of Housing provides home funds for housing rehab, as well as other type of housing programs. And we're able to secure some funds from that agency, as well as the City of Yuma, through the joint efforts of the communities in Yuma County, form a consortium to get a direct allocation from HUD. And this is the 3rd year we receive funds. So we were awarded a couple $100,000 for the program as well. So that should help. We try to leverage to make our dollar stretched to help assist more families. And so we like to, whenever possible, leverage against other funding sources. The Western Arizona Council of Government has a weatherization program, which helps ensure the home has the energy efficiency to the homes. And that is a requirement of the funding from our grantors, is to ensure after we complete a home that it is sealed properly so that there's no leakage in air. You know, here in Yuma, the air conditioner is running. That's the biggest cost of this utility is the electricity bill. So also, USDA has a lot of housing programs. So whenever possible, to reduce our costs, we try to leverage with them to ensure that we're covering as many families as possible. This is a requirement of the program. Applicant has to be eligible to qualify for the program to receive assistance. The housing size goes into the calculation, the income goes in the calculation. They have to be legal residents of the U.S. in order to receive assistance, and they have to be the owner of the property and reside on that property in order to receive assistance. And there are a few other things, but those are the main core on applicant eligibility. The property eligibility is where we look at the home has to be a primary residence because we're putting investments into the homes. We want to make sure it's the homeowner that's going to benefit and not a renter that's benefiting from it. There are a few components here where it's more of a policy of the county versus a requirement of the state, and we can certainly discuss any of those issues. Right now, we have in place where we will not provide any investment in a home if the homeowner had not lived in that property and owned that property for 2 years. So before they even apply to us for assistance, we have to make sure that they have owned the property for 2 years. The reason for that is, you know, we certainly don't want to provide an investment to a new home buyer. The home has to be 15 years old or older. We feel that, you know, homeowners should take care of their home at least for that term. So we don't want to put investment into a home that's been destroyed within less than 15 years. Mm-hmm. And the property cannot be located in a 100-year flood. The reason for that is that there's a lot of issues when the residence is in the 100-year flood zone. There's a lot of regulations you got to go through in order to even receive assistance, and you know the homeowner will have to buy flood insurance or even qualify for assistance, and that can be very expensive. So we don't want to mandate those kind of things if we're providing assistance to a low-income family. So it just makes sense not to assist families in the 100-year flood zone.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure. Would that include El Pueblocito, La Jolla, those areas in the valley that might have people who would qualify? Yes, that's part of the 100-year flood.
If it's inside the 100-year flood, yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, that's an internal policy. So
Yeah.
if you wish to change it, we can certainly look at it. It just is very,
Expensive.
I think, cost prohibitive for us to work in 100-year zone.
Okay.
We want to make sure that the homeowner is current on mortgage, property tax, mortgage insurance, and all that. again, you don't want to invest dollars into a home that's going to be foreclosed. So, and there's no outside lien or judgment on the property because, again, you want to protect ourselves from having to be at loss on that investment.
Nancy, I had a
Yes, sir.
question. I'm assuming that it's owner occupied, right? This would not apply to a rental unit, correct?
These are all owner occupied, not
Only for
renters.
at least
Right.
2 years prior to application.
The assistance that we provide currently is a zero interest defer forgivable loan. So in essence, it does convert to a grant. If they, for the long term, if they live in the residence for the years that is specified on the affordability period, it converts to a grant. Okay. We don't have a recapture policy. It requires a lot of tracking, requires, hiring someone to collect on the loan. There's a lot of ramifications of that. And staff feels that we don't receive sufficient dollar to get involved in the recapture period or consistently receive a large volume of dollars. But that's the reason for it. Our investment policy currently is $5,000 minimum, and the maximum is $40,000. The $40,000 is only on hard costs, the construction costs. It does not include any of the soft costs like obtaining title reports, the energy efficiency inspection, pre and post inspection requirements, any of staff time investment into, writing up the loan, that sort of thing, is only on the actual hard cost. That's the amount that we put a lien on the property.
Oh, okay.
So,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So does the lien extinguish, or do you have to remember to go in and remove it?
We have to go in and remove the lien.
Okay.
Yeah, we provide lien release at the end of the term. Usually that comes up when the property owner tries to sell the property or there's a transfer of title.
Right, if they do that before, then you receive the money back, right? If they sell,
Yeah, if they sell as part of the.
Yeah,
it's part of the sale then, right?
Usually it's part of the escrow, yes.
And then why are we writing it off on the owner's death?
We're writing off a portion of the loan based on the term, how many years they live in it. The current, and we'll discuss proposed changes recommended by staff. But one of the proposed changes that we'll revert back to when the property owners pass away, that if there's still period of affordability that haven't been captured yet, then they repay that portion that hadn't been captured.
That's going to be your recommendation?
Yes.
That would be mine. Thank you.
Yes. So, yeah, Mr. Chair, so I read that it would go through probate, and then at that time we would be able to recapture before the heirs get any
Benefit from
it, correct?
We will require it at the time that it transfer title. Once the new owner is in place and we find out about it, we start our action. And they can qualify. If they qualify, they can take over residing and own the property. If they don't live on the property, all the requirements that we have with the current owner, it transferred to the new owner if that new owner qualifies.
Okay.
If it doesn't qualify, what happens?
If he doesn't qualify, then we start proceedings to collect on the portion of the affordability based on the affordability period.
That's sort of like,
Shouldn't that have happened in escrow?
no, well, if it's
No
going to be
escrow.
sold, yes, but I mean, we're talking about a family member, let's say that it's a father dies and then it goes to the son or daughter or whatever, but then the son or daughter can't qualify because of affordability. Maybe they have another home and now they have two homes. So now, that's really delicate for me, that that person that inherits that property is immediately asked to repay something he didn't have anything to do with, and that, essentially they inherited. So they inherited a house with a problem, which is a lien that is going to be due upon the death of the original owner. That is a problem for me. Well, we can talk about it. Yeah, we'll have to talk about it.
We can discuss that.
Right, sorry, but we got
Yeah,
caught up in the question.
Let me finish real quick.
Right.
Sorry. So anyway, I think this is it.
Anyway,
Moving
we'll
on.
go to the changes now.
Affordability period. We're talking about the proposed changes that staff had discussed, and this is what our recommendation.
Why?
You can discuss it and make a decision.
This is the first part of the question. Why would you want to do that?
We're looking at adding another 5 years to the affordability period only because the funding that we're receiving from the City of Yuma, it has to be by their policy and not by the county's policy. And their policy has the additional 5 years. The current policy on the affordability period is the minimum proposed by HUD. You cannot go lower than that, but that's a minimum. So we've been going on the minimum basis. City of Yuma has the additional 5 year on their policy. And we feel that how do you tell one family
5 years.
your lien is going to be 5 year and the same amount on the other family? No, your lien because the funding source.
You tell them it's different funding sources. Yeah, you tell them it's different funding sources. We punish the ones that have a 5 year affordability period because the City of Yuma decided that they're going to go for the maximum instead of the minimum. I mean, this is a.
That's up to you.
Well, if it was me, I'd rather have it be a statement that says that the eligibility period will be based upon the funding source, which means that, if the funding requires a minimum of 5 years, then you give them 5 years. If the City of Yuma requires 10 and that's where the funding comes from, you give them 10. If another funding source requires a 7.5 year period, then you give them 7.5. That way you're not, making it a one size fit all.
Mr. Chairman and Nancy, do you mix those funding sources when you're doing a property, or are they from this funding source or this funding source or this funding source? Do you know what I'm saying?
We do it based on first come, first serve. So if let's say one family qualifies, gone through the eligibility and qualifies right now, and we're using the home dollar to assist that family, then it will be based on their City of Yuma's policy. If the funding we have available, because our funding, the way we structure it as to what funding is being used is based on the timeline specified by the grantor. So they're requiring us to complete so many homes by certain dates. So we're locked into certain funding for certain applicants, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that didn't answer the question I thought that I heard. So let me ask it a different way.
I know what,
In a single home, if they need some assistance, do they receive funding from both the county and the city at the same time for a project? So those funds are not commingled, right? Wasn't that the question?
Yeah, but
Okay.
she answered it, I understood.
All right.
Yeah, if the city's involved, it's gonna be 10 years.
Right, and because of the way it is right now, you have families that qualify under the regular one at 5 years, and you have ones that qualify under the city at 10 years. So you want to make it consistent by going up to 10 years, which I have a problem with. The City of Yuma's, system, instead of making it easier for people, they make it tougher for people. I mean, that's not the only rule that I have a problem with, but But because of this, I tell you right now, I don't, it's a form of assistance, and there is a certain amount of time that people have to keep at home, but making them keep it 10 years before, you have a $5,000 grant and you have to keep it 10 years, otherwise you're going to have to pay it back. It's just way, way out there. Well, anyway, that's my opinion. But you're asking us to look at this.
Yes, yeah, we're looking here today to get directions from you as to what you wish to see. And then what we will do is make those modifications, send it to the grantor, get their approval, and then we'll take it back to you for a resolution to adopt the entire.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I think that if, I agree with Tony that if they're using funds that that we can only require 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years, then that's where we should go. If we're using funds that use the city's funds that
We don't use the city.
I know, but use funds that are
Yeah.
require 10, 15, and 20, then we'll do that, but not push everybody out to 10, 15, and 20.
If I could add, Nancy,
Question?
specifically on the city, you're talking about the home consortium.
Yes.
And that's what the 10, 15, and 20 is. So it sounds
they
like the
qualify in the
board
home.
saying if they're under the home city consortium program, they go with the 10. If they're under any other of our programs, they would go with the 5-year.
But no change will remain the same way. If we don't make any changes, it would remain the way it is right now, which means it would go 5-year, 10, and 15-year based upon, the home funds that we get, and it would be 10, 15, and 20 based on the cities, right?
The consortium,
The
right.
consortium, yeah, I know it's the home consortium.
I do want to make one clarification that was brought out by Supervisor McLeod. There are very few instances where we do have to leverage funds from usually toward the end of the program where we still have some extra funds left over. So if the situation
There could
arises
be one.
where we have remaining city funds or the home consortium funds, leveraging that with the CDBG funds, we will have to go with the maximum, just so you know.
Yeah, but again, if you use city funds from the consortium, you know that you have to follow those rules. If you don't mix them, if you just use
Right.
ours, you have those rules.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Supervisor McClellan.
Nancy, would you explain, so if I'm understanding this right, what we're talking about is a number of years the homeowner must remain in the home without having to repay the loan, right?
Right.
Okay, and then, so if you push it out another 5 years, what difference does it make in the amount that needs to be repaid? I would assume that
It doesn't have to be
it would
repaid.
stretch it out, right?
No, wait. I think he does not understand. This is a forgivable loan. It doesn't have to be repaid.
Right.
After 5 years, that's it. After 10 years, that's it. If you live in that house.
Correct.
Correct, but there is still a lien that has to be
Clear.
So in other words, if you sell in 3 years, right?
Yeah, that's
And the
it.
policy is 5 versus a policy of 10, what does that mean to the homeowner? You follow the question?
So,
They have to pay
so within the policy, we said we would forgive a portion of the
Portion,
loan
third.
for each year that they live in
350.
it. So let's say a family
Prorated, yeah.
borrows 5,000 and it's for 5 years. If they live in year 1, year 2, they decide to sell the home, we will forgive 1,000.
That way.
And they will
And
have
it's
to
a
repay
prorated
4.
share.
Yeah, right.
It's prorated.
That's what I thought. So in essence, it's a higher dollar amount with a shorter time period each year,
Proportionate.
proportionate, right?
Yeah.
They forgive a higher
Oh,
portion.
well, you know what? I'd be in favor of the 10, 15, 20. But I'm just one, it's up to the board, but I think that's a better use of taxpayer dollars. If somebody benefits,
Mr. Chair.
we improve a home and
Get you
they
there.
sell and benefit from that improvement. I don't think the taxpayer should bear that burden. I think the dollars should come back and be reused for another family, because we're talking about the availability of funds. If we were to go to the 10, 15, and 20, you're going to have more funds to help more people. And the taxpayer
they get paid. They don't pay
benefiting
back.
these individuals.
They don't pay back.
Yeah, they do if they sell the home.
Right.
If you take $5,000, call it 10,
Mhm.
okay? That's $2,000 a year that gets extinguished. okay?
Mhm.
If it's 10 years, it's $1,000 a year. So the lien on the home, if they take $10,000 of taxpayer dollars, improve their home, sell it, and benefit from the improvement to that home, that money should go back to the taxpayer if they don't live in it for the 10 years. I mean, I'm definitely in favor of that. It benefits the taxpayer, and because the money comes back to you, you will then have more money to benefit another family.
Don't, I mean, unless I'm a math, I stayed in school way too short, I guess. I don't get it because the
Am I
money
wrong?
is, the money is the money. If you.
No. Am I
Yes,
wrong?
it is.
If I am, correct me, because I'm not understanding.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor McLeod, maybe I should clarify, and then hopefully I got the direction of the question. Repayment of the portion that have not been forgiven, it doesn't come back to the county program. It goes back to the grantor. It does benefit, obviously, additional, because it does
Somebody
roll
down
back
the
into
line,
the
yeah, I
program,
get
but
you.
not
Okay.
necessary to you.
So it won't go back into your funds. It goes back to where the money came from, HUD,
HUD.
for instance. Yeah, it's still taxpayer dollars, same story.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Nancy?
Oh, sorry.
If it, Mr.
Nina,
Chairman?
hold on a minute.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry,
hold
go
on.
ahead, Mike.
I was just gonna.
He's been trying to get a word edgewise here since we started here, so I'm just gonna let him.
Sorry, Martin.
I think he forgot what he wanted to say at the beginning, so go ahead, Martin.
Actually, I was just wanted to add that the more years we add, or that
Required.
if someone passes away, it'd be this, we gotta get that money back or go through probate with whoever inherits that property.
Chance people die in
Whoa,
10 years and in
wait
5
just a minute, yeah, but how is that different than a second mortgage to do a home improvement? How is that different?
Because
it goes with the house.
it goes,
Second
yeah,
mortgage with the
because
house.
if I owe
This
my
one doesn't.
house, my son, if I pass it on to my son, if I
Right.
haven't paid it off, he can say, well, let the bank keep it. I mean, there's still a lot of money.
But
With this, if the
have to
house,
pay it
if
back.
the house is paid back, it's paid off, and he only got a loan for $5,000, and it's passed on to a son or daughter, they still gotta pay that money.
They would have to
Because they
pay,
don't
pay out a
qualify.
second mortgage. It's like a second mortgage.
It's like a debt tax.
But
Which
not
you,
that
which you.
bad.
Yes,
No,
it
it's
is.
this
It
is a
is.
second mortgage that actually gets extinguished.
No,
No, it
doesn't.
doesn't.
Yeah, it
get
does. If they
extinguished.
live in there another 10 years,
But if
it's
they don't live,
extinguished.
But if they don't live there?
they don't live
They
there
don't,
for
if they don't
10 years.
qualify, what happens? If a family doesn't qualify, what happens? What happens if a family
It's
doesn't
like a
qualify?
second mortgage.
No.
It's
They
no
have to
different.
pay it
They
off.
gotta pay
They have
it.
to pay it off.
They have to pay.
That's
Right.
right. So I need to define that a little bit, clearer. If a family member that inherits a house that has, this lien on it, let's say a daughter or a son that inherits a house, when they inherit it, they have to come to the agency, whatever the agency, and see if they qualify for that particular loan. If they don't, then if they want to keep the house, they're gonna have to pay off that lien, correct?
If they
They don't qualify
if
for
they
it.
choose to keep the house, they have to reside in it.
That's what I mean. I mean,
Then
if you have a house, yes,
And qualify.
and qualify. So you see,
And
that's
if
the
they
thing.
don't qualify,
We recently
have
went
to pay.
through the scenario, in fact, we just went through it a couple of months ago, where the beneficiary wants to sell the house. So unfortunately, he felt it was unfair that he has to pay on that loan. But it is a lien on the property, so really,
to pay it
there's
off.
no choice. And so
as it,
He paid it off. That's it.
As it
That's,
should be.
that's
it's
He
just like
paid
a
it off,
second mortgage.
correct?
he paid it off.
Okay, I have a question, Mr. Chairman and Nancy. Nancy, will those funds be available again after 5 years when that one is paid off? Will you get more, the funding back again? You know what I'm saying?
No, it's a
Um,
forgivable.
No.
It's forgivable. You
It
don't
goes
I know
away.
it's
There's an
forgiven.
annual-
I know,
There's
but
an
you,
annual grant,
okay,
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
But I was
It's,
thinking, the sooner it's paid off, the sooner you
better.
can, the sooner you can help someone else.
No, it doesn't.
It
Doesn't get
work
paid
like
back.
Doesn't
that.
get paid
I
off.
know.
doesn't get paid back. That's the key to this whole situation. It's a forgivable loan, which is actually a grant. But people have to stay with it for as long as it's required, which is in this case, a minimum of 5 years. If it's between $5,000 and $15,000, which the majority of the loans and grants, there's a loan or a grant of $40,000 is something I've always had a problem with to begin with, especially in the market that we are in for low-income family. helping them with $40,000 is way out there for me. But, and let's say that it does happen. To me, having a 10-year repayment plan on a $40,000, it's okay. I mean, I find that to be sort of acceptable. Having,
It's 15 now.
It's 50.
Should go to 20.
Well, that's what I mean. I'll talk below 40,000, right? Anyway, look, I'd say that you have to follow the guidelines of the grantor. Okay?
They are.
And the grantor
so does-
says.
And the grantor is
proposed
asking
change
10,
follows the
15,
guidelines.
20. And that's fine with me. If the city of Yuma has those requirements, meet them. But don't change our requirements or the ones you have from other places to meet those. I don't know why they come up with those. They go to the maximum probably.
No, they're not the maximum, but, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we'll do whatever you wish to do. Our concern was more the fact that, as families qualify, one of the things that they always ask is, how long do we have to pay it back? So, that information is always typically given upfront to the client. So before we address, what funding source we have to go through next. So
You have to tell them it's between 5 and 10, depending on which grant you qualify for. And then remind them that the
Yes, we
city of
will.
Yuma has a higher
Sure.
one, higher threshold.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
What is your pleasure? Do you want to address these by motion one by one, or wait? until
Well,
we
what
see
is the other
all?
change? There's only
go
one
see them
more.
all?
Move on to,
Yeah, go
wanna
ahead.
move on?
Let's cool off a
Okay.
minute or two and do our math.
okay. Here are some of the others that staff
Don't change.
was looking at.
I don't want to go to 55.
We're looking at not changing the minimum, the 5,000.
Too much.
If you wish to change it, we certainly could. The 5,000 minimum is only because, the county does provide some funds to nonprofits to do minor repairs, and theirs usually up to about, $10,000. So we feel 5,000 being our minimum is more than adequate to cover. The maximum investment, we are looking at, hoping that you agree to increase the maximum for, if it's just a rehab, to 55, and if we have to tear down, do a reconstruction, 75,000. The reason is the cost of construction is so high now, and a lot of the units that we assist just have so many issues with it that is costing a lot to bring it up to code. So,
Look, let me just tell you, I had problems at 40. Now you want to increase it to 55. If you have to do a rehab of a house and you have to spend $75,000, you could build a new house for $75,000. In San Luis, you can't. I mean,
Well, that's what they're doing, I think, right?
Yes,
You
that's
build-
what they're doing.
You deconstruct and reconstruct on the same property. right?
Yes, reconstruction
On
master.
some, yes.
On some?
Yeah.
if the repair is so severe that it costs more to rehab, then sometimes it's more efficient to just tear it down and rebuild.
Let me ask you just a question that's related to how many times you're going to do this. What is your amount, your grant amount, your maximum grant amount that you've gotten for rehab, reconstruction? For a year, one.
The grantor doesn't specify how many reconstruction we do. Obviously, we're limited to, when we submit the grant application, how many unit we project to complete. And we typically base it on 40,000 in the past.
Mm-hmm. How many?
And we have done reconstruction, probably 1 or 2 out of each grant contract.
Right, but let me see if I can re-ask the question. What is the largest rehab grant that we have submitted for and gotten in terms of an amount? 400, 500, 600, whatever. 200.
Biggest grant contract we had in the past is around $1 million.
What was the one this year?
The largest one this coming cycle, next 2 years, is $500,000.
So we're talking about $500,000 grant, of which 20% goes to administration? 12, 14%?
From the $500,000 grant, we're projecting to complete 8 units, what we stipulate to the grantor. So
And if you change it,
we are aware that we will have issues if we have too many at the high threshold dollar, because you have to remember some are lower, some are higher. Hopefully, we can capture some lower one to offset the higher ones. To,
Yeah,
to
somebody
ensure.
needs a new roof, somebody needs windows replaced, yeah.
Well, you're talking, if only 8 is $60,000 per unit.
you gotta take out the administrative cost.
Administration.
And how much, what percent is admin?
We are, depending on type of funding, we typically with community development block grant, we can have a maximum of 18%.
And what are we doing the 18?
Some some contracts we are, some we're not.
So it's $100,000
Who
less.
makes that decision?
They do.
Isn't that a board policy?
No.
Or do you make that decision?
When we submit the grant application, we make that decision based on the type of project we're going to be completing. Housing rehab is one of the more time intensive. So therefore, we typically ask for the maximum. And if we don't use all the administration dollar, we can transfer it down. That's with all the grants. If we don't use administration dollar, we can transfer a project, but not reverse the other way.
So you track the staff time spent and account for that then?
Correct.
Excellent.
All right.
Well done.
Okay, let me just see if we could go to the proposed changes, right? No change in the minimum investment of 5,000. You want to go to a maximum investment per unit, 55,000 from 40,000 now? Is that what it is now, 40,000?
Currently, the maximum is 40,000.
Okay. And then the reconstruction maximum investment per unit, you want to raise it to 75. What is it now?
Right now, the 40,000, there is a caveat in the policy that in extenuating circumstances, the director has authorization to waive that maximum. So on the reconstruction we've been doing so far, we've been waiving the 40,000. Initially, when we started the reconstruction, we're able to do it around 50,000.
Right.
And we've been seeing that the cost has been coming up to, what, 65, 70?
Materials themselves.
Reconstruction, 2-bedroom. So it's closer to 70.
Okay, and then the last one is the loan to be repaid or to requalify upon the principal's owner debt prior to completion of loan terms. What do you mean? What do you mean with that?
Well, we've been discussing,
Yeah.
basically what we've been discussing, if an owner passed away, we'll
What is it now?
capture that.
What is it now? I thought.
The last few years, it will be written off.
Right.
Once
All
we
right.
receive death certificate.
Okay.
It'll be
All right.
written
Well, but
off.
we're changing that so
So
that
she
that
wants
has
to
be
put
repaid. Good.
repay or requalify. I
Mhm.
have a problem with that right away, but I'm not 5.
I don't have any problem.
So,
Someone that
oh yeah, to pass it on to whomever, gets the
parents.
house,
Well, sure, why not?
They built,
You
they
pass on a
have
second
to,
mortgage.
Mr. Chairman,
you
they
don't-
have to build a brand new house for 75,000. And that house is brand new now, and the person who originally had this grant dies after
Okay,
2 years.
let me just separate one from another. I don't have a problem with the lien staying on the house until it's sold. Let's just make that clear. I'm not saying that whomever inherited don't have to pay it. I'm saying that whomever inherits the house should continue to have the same terms as original. You're saying that you have to requalify, okay? And that's what the problem is to me, that you have to requalify someone that now inherited something that they didn't have any idea, and now they have to pay it back, okay? Because they don't qualify, and that could present a problem to some couple that has a house that can't go move into the new one because they have a mortgage on the house they just bought. So now they have a second house where they're not going to be asked to repay it because they can't qualify because they have to live in the house, and now they're faced with an inheritance that comes with a due bill, which is a tax, death tax, I call it. So I could try to talk in terms of someone that understands that in that particular way. But that's what it boils down to. If you have to repay or requalify when you inherit that house, then you're facing a different situation. A situation you never expected, a situation you're not ready for, a situation you won't be able to solve other than paying that off or letting it go up to sale. In other words, you can't keep it. You have to sell it. And that to me is you know, why would you want to do that? Why don't you just
Why
keep
can't you sell your other?
can't you, you know, maybe I should ask it in terms of a question. Can that lien remain in the house after the death of the prior owner until it's paid off?
Now you're getting to where I was going.
Mr. Chairman.
I normally do that.
The answer is
eventually.
no.
See, that's the problem right there.
The requirement is that they do have to qualify because it's the funding is for low-income families. If they don't qualify as a low-income family, they cannot live in that home. So secondly, I do want to let you know that we have not come across this in our time doing this program, but the reason for the change previously to writing off the lien is because the county will have to take legal action, and that cost will be at the cost of the county.
What's the legal action?
If we have to, if the new owner do not qualify and is unable to secure funds to pay the loan, the lien, to pay off, the county will have to take legal action, and that legal action has to come from the cost of the county.
Go ahead, Supervisor McLeod.
I think
See if
that
we
we
can
were on
get
the
there.
same page.
Yeah, we were.
And so help me to understand. I think what the chairman was getting at, what I had in mind, was that the lien, the owner dies, right? You've done a reconstruction or whatever. You spent $40,000 on this house, and 2 years later, the owner passes. Okay. The title would transfer, but why can't the lien remain until such time as the home is sold?
Because they have to requalify it. You just
No.
explained that.
No, if they qualify, then it's not an issue. But if they don't qualify, what mechanism prevents the lien from remaining until sale of the home?
HUD requirements?
It's the same rule that applied to the original applicant applies to a new owner. So if that new owner resides as a primary resident on that property and qualify income-wise, that lien stays.
Yeah, right.
But
I got it.
Yeah.
They don't, so we're talking about they don't qualify. What mechanism prevents us from keeping a lien attached to that home until it sells?
HUD regulation.
HUD regulation. Okay, HUD won't allow that.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're
Or
talking
is that our
about,
policy?
you're talking about when, yes.
When a person
We do give them, if their intent is to sell the property, they have to choose to do it at that time. So if they make the decision not to sell when they take over ownership of that property, and they keep it for another year, they want to keep it for another year before they sell it, that's not a choice that they can make. They have to qualify when they take ownership, and if they don't qualify, they have to make a decision. If they chose to put it on the market right away, we will provide them some leeway in time to sell the property.
I have another question. Could they sell it? Once they've inherited it, could they sell it to a family member who could qualify? I mean, is that a possibility?
Can you transfer it? Probably.
Can you
not sell
transfer it to a family member that does qualify?
It may not be possible.
Sure.
Okay.
It's the same as
All right,
purchasing and
okay,
qualifying.
so here we are. The proposed changes are simple. No change on the minimum investment, so there is no change, right? You want to keep that, right? So there's actually no change. That is the minimum investment. The maximum investment per unit, you want to raise it to 55, which only brings in a more serious problem if somebody dies too soon, because now the money that was loaned to them is higher. And then the reconstruction maximum, you want to go from 40 with the director being able to waive it to actually making it so that the actual investment can be up to $75,000 regardless of whatever. I mean, this won't require, a decision to waive. And the loan to be repaid or requalify upon the principal's owner date prior to completion of loan terms, that is a HUD requirement. So do we have an option not to take it? Because if it's a HUD requirement and it comes with the grant or the subsidy, I don't think you have a choice.
No, I don't think it's a have to.
The choice is that the current policy says that if the owner passed away, that lien is removed.
Mr. Chairman?
Wait. Let me just finish that up.
That is allowed.
That is allowed.
Yes, that is
Right
allowed.
now, she wants to change it so it doesn't.
I mean, you kill
That'd
it.
be
That's the
our
reason
You
we
killing
changed
it.
That'd be
it.
our
That's the reason we
policy.
changed it to that.
Mr. Chairman,
That'd be our policy.
That's the reason we changed it to that, is that it is allowed.
So what's allowed is to waive it off when a person dies. Okay, and now what you want to do is you want to put it in so that a loan has to be repaid either by requalifying or in case you want to extend it to requalifying or to be paid off at the time of death by the beneficiary, whomever the beneficiary would be. That is making,
Chairman?
this is government at work.
it is.
It is government at work.
Mr. Chairman, Nancy,
Supervisor.
is there a reason why you're wanting to change these rules?
Especially because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
Is there a reason?
Wait, what?
The reason is that we got new funding for the next 2 years, so it's a good time to review the policies, and if, the board wants to make any changes, modification to anything that's within the guideline, things that can be changed, the internal policies, we want to bring it up to you so that you can take a look at it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Nancy, has
Supervisor
everything been
Franklin.
working
I don't know.
well up to this point? Even before the new funding, has everything worked well? Have you had issues with any of these? Is that why you're having them changed or considering changing them? Because if everything's working well, why are we changing?
To improve.
The biggest issue we have, to be honest, is the maximum. The current policy is extenuating circumstances, we waive,
Right,
provide waiver.
right.
We're getting way too many homes that
That you're having to do.
are so dilapidated that it costs more than the 40,000. So,
To repair.
and actually, the Department of Housing has
They're not gonna sell it by 8 homes at a
65,000
time.
for rehab and 90,000 for reconstruction.
Mm.
And City of Yuma don't even have a minimum maximum.
Mm.
Yeah, you know what?
Mr. Chairman,
I've had this discussion 20 years ago at Wake Up. Okay, all right, so the first one is no change, right? The minimum investment is no change. So let's go on to the max, let's get one at a time because otherwise we're not gonna move
well,
through
Mr.
this.
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept all of the recommended changes.
Notice the quietness, remains here in the second here.
I like the first three. I don't like the last one.
Well, the first one is not even a change, that remains,
Well,
no
actually,
change.
the
It says
first
no
one is-
change, so it's not a proposed change.
Actually, first
No,
one
no,
says-
don't do that. Thank you.
The first one is
County
5 to
Administrator.
Yes,
5 to 15?
yes, that would be the first one.
This is the first one.
I don't think we need
Oh,
to change
you-
that, and I don't think we need to change the last one. If you want to change the amounts, then that would be fine with me.
Oh,
I don't want to change the last one. I don't want to change the maximum, but I'm willing to compromise to get this thing moving. Put it back in the other one then. All right,
Okay.
so,
well, that motion died for lack of
Okay.
a second. I move that we accept all of them except the last one, loan to be repaid or requalified.
And the first one.
well, the first one's fine. I don't have a problem. Look, to move this process forward, I'm willing
The
to,
first one is changing it from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20, right?
That is
Adding-
correct.
Adding more years.
No, those aren't it. There's one before that.
Yeah, that's it. That's my motion.
okay, wait.
That we
Yeah.
accept all of the recommended changes.
All right, all
Want to do
right.
one at a time?
No,
Just
no,
make sure?
yes, but look.
That's up
so-
to the chairman.
So, okay, look. So there is more than the second page, right? There's more changes in the second page, right?
Only
This
if you wish there to be.
There isn't. I don't wish to deal with this. I think I made it clear that I like it to remain the way it
That's
is.
my motion.
City of Yuma can keep their 10-year, 15, 20-year schedule. You keep the 5 and 10 and 15. That's what I said, so I moved on to the other one. Not that we took a vote on it, but, so we moved on to the other changes. And then it appeared up here as no change
We didn't take a
on
vote.
minimum investment. So I thought there was no change on minimum investment. It's a proposed change,
Recommendation. That's the recommendation, is no change on the minimum.
but there's
I
no
mean, from staff.
change. You get me confused. There is no change. There is no proposed
We could
recommendation.
raise it if we wanted.
All right, so no raise on the minimum. Remain the same, no change.
You're not going to second my second motion?
No, Let's go, then what we got is the eligibility period is 1, right? Correct? The maximum investment per unit is 2 changes that you're requesting or that you're suggesting. Number 3 is the reconstruction maximum investment per unit, and the 4th is the loan to be repaid at death, right? So Supervisor Pancrase says no loan to be repaid at death, otherwise she's not taking any motions. And the other ones are just the maximum investment per unit and the reconstruction maximum investment per unit. Do you realize, or does the board member realize that a 75,000 reconstruction maximum investment to be paid off in 5 years, or to be forgiven in 5 years, it's a 15, big. No.
It's 15.
Oh, it's 15. Excuse me. I take it back. Let me get too confusing. So if you want to, we will take it one at a time. Okay, to make it clear. Go back to the first change that you have like to see, which is the affordability period. You make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the county stays at 5, 10, and 15, and if it's part of the consortium, that we meet those consortium requirements of 10, 15, and 20.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to move on this first request. Any discussion anymore? I'm not allowing any discussion. All those in favor of the motion? I'm just kidding. The attorney's looking at me like ugly. No, any discussion on the motion? No. No discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Nay.
Okay. It only counts as 1. So it's 3-1. The second one, move it on. Move it to the next one. Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about is no change in the minimum investment. We're going to leave that one there.
Mr.
Maximum
Chairman,
investment per unit?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we keep the minimum investment at $5,000.
All right, so the motion to keep the minimum investment of $5,000, that's okay. We're just going to clear this up. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to keep the minimum investment at to have no change at $5,000. Is there a discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by taking aye.
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 Anybody opposed? So the motion to not change anything passed. The next one, the maximum investment per unit at $55,000. Is there a motion to that effect?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the maximum investment per unit be $55,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second that the maximum investment per unit remains at $55,000. Any discussion on this motion? No discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Any painful no's? No, nothing. Motion passes unanimously. The reconstruction maximum investment per unit at $75,000. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to have any discussion on that?
Yeah, if you want to.
Well, I know you thought it was a little.
No, I'm voting against it. So there's no discussion. I think that anytime I think that anytime you have to invest $75,000 in a house, you're redoing a house. You're refinancing that house totally. It's really because $75,000 in San Luis, and I build houses all the time. You're building a new house, a 2 or 3 bedroom unit with $40,000 lot, $75,000. That's $130,000 home. So to me, that is too much money to be used in one single project.
Oh, excuse me.
This is what it is right now?
Where'd that come from?
Where
That
did
was
that
the
one
loan.
come from?
This was the old one. Yeah. No. But I think that she's talking about getting approved. She.
My boo-boo. Sorry.
All right.
Your current maximum is 40, and you allow yourself to override that, correct?
Yeah, there's no maximum right now.
80,000.
Policy on 80,000. On the current
All right.
policy.
So if you want discussion on this, I'm not in favor of raising the maximum investment without some study about the benefit. We give this authority to the director anyway. So,
Mr.
to
Chairman,
me,
can we just eliminate the maximum and let the chairman decide?
the chairman, yes.
Or not the chairman, but the director?
I don't
And
trust
let the
you.
director, director determine the amount?
No, I don't.
Mr.
No,
Chairman-
that's just too
Mr.
much.
Chairman, what's
That
happening?
would mean,
What's happening is that they're
cap,
actual
the cap.
going out for bids and getting reconstruction or or remodeling bids back, they're expensive. They're going higher and higher. So we need this maximum in order to actually reflect what's happening in the
flip side of that,
marketplace.
I get that. I like I said, I work in construction. I build 80 homes a year right now, moderate homes a year. I know that. But I'm saying, look, when you're going to go out there and put $75,000 into a reconstruction, I shouldn't call it rehab, because essentially it is a rehab. It's just it's an extreme rehab. You tear it down and build it again. You're actually just creating a second mortgage under certain terms. You're just basically you're given a home. You're actually, and that to me is too high to spend on fixing one problem when there's so many of them out there.
Okay.
There's just too many out there. I mean,
Then what would you consider a friendly amendment?
I'd say
Well,
60.
one of the things is that if
65.
there's an application that requires about that amount, so automatically it will be eliminated. They won't. If we can't go, yeah.
We walk.
They walk. So you're eliminating already people that won't qualify for that. But also, if you're in construction, you should know, I mean, it's very expensive to tear down and rebuild. It is, but it's not like buying a new home. I mean,
well, you have the lot. That's
why.
Why you don't have it go over 100,000, because the lot's covered.
And I think by saying that we're eliminating that, the fact that this is a grant and it's something that it's an aid to someone.
The only way,
all right, for someone to go to a bank and asking a loan.
Here's a compromise. All right, I understand that you can actually do that right now.
Yes. You can.
Okay, so to me, raising it to 75,000 when you can approve, up to 80 from the looks of the other one, you could approve up to 80. You just want to make sure that someone like me doesn't come after you saying, "Why did you approve a house at $75,000?" And you would come and tell me, because you guys gave me the authority to do that without having to go through extenuating circumstances, which is the only thing that you want really, is to remove the extenuating circumstances from that process. Right? So you just want to get blanket authority to do it without having to go through the thing of creating an emergency, or not creating, but documenting an extenuating circumstance, which I don't even know what that's defined as. But that's basically what you want to do. And this, to me, it's better because it caps it. Otherwise, it didn't. Because if you want that, I'm not going to accept it unless we take the authority for you to declare anything beyond that.
That's what this does, I believe.
This is what this does,
This
right?
sets the ceiling.
So in essence, we're giving something, we're giving something for something else. We're making it so that you don't have to justify it. At the same time, we're taking the authority to do that. Correct? Okay, so I'm voting for it. Let's go.
Okay.
The reconstruction.
You got a motion and a second already?
Okay, the motion and a second for reconstruction maximum investment per unit of $75,000. And this goes again by removing the policy that, the director has the authority to do that. With that, there won't be no extenuating circumstances.
Correct. Yes,
right?
That'll be part of the motion.
All right,
okay?
So there's a motion and a second to go ahead and increase the reconstruction maximum investment per unit to $75,000, with the caveat that it removes the ability of the director to determine extenuating circumstances or emergency circumstances. Any more discussion to the motion? No discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. And the last one, I don't even want a motion, but if you want to make a motion, fine. Motion is what?
My motion, I move that we remain, that the policy that's already in place
Remains
stay in place, and that this one not be considered.
Well, if it isn't going to be considered, there's no motion needed, but.
Okay.
So, you're just gonna have to make a motion to deny this. Well, actually, we don't have to do anything.
No.
You just don't approve the change, and that's it, right?
Oh,
Unless you want to make it a policy.
It's helpful for you to actually make a decision about this, to give.
Okay, fine.
I move to deny the
Great, that's
1,
not a
2,
word.
3, 4, the loan, that the loan be repaid upon the death.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Let's get it over with. Let's get a vote on it. There's been a motion and a second to not change the policy as we have it right now. Leave the policy as we have it right now. Is there any discussion on this?
Just a question, Nancy. Is that what we have right now in place? That's our policy?
Yes. In terms of the lien being removed.
Being removed. That's our
Death
policy.
certificate, that's our policy.
Okay, it's fine. It's worked so well. Most people haven't died yet. Make sure that people have a long, lengthy life in front of them before you approve that grant. I'll see if we could, right? Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed?
Nay.
All right, so, thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so you got 3 out of 4.
Boy, that was
That was tough.
pain.
All right, so taking a breather for a minute, and we have the easy one, the election canvassing.
That's not easy.
Well, the next item is the County Administrator or Elections Director canvass the unofficial results of the November 6, 2018 general election. We have a summary or
No, just even that thing.
we have I guess these are the unofficial that will become official after the canvassing?
Yes, Mr.
And
Chairman.
the county recorder is here, and, okay, fine. First thing I'd like you to do is explain the letter that's in front of it. What does that mean? The fact that we did not conduct an early ballot audit and head count at the vote centers after the November 6th. What does that mean?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Melcher, Interim Elections Director.
Mhm.
So the first, I'll go through the entire Canvas documents here in the packet just to show you what's in there and describe all of that. If you'd allow me first, I'd like to do some quick thank yous, particularly since this has been a very interesting midterm election cycle. I wanted to start first by thanking County Recorder Robin Paquette and her staff because of the countless hours they put in to process the early ballots. You'll see later on that our turnout was a little bit over 50%, and to get all those early ballots back and processed is a great service to the county, in particular elections.
You mean they didn't count the hours?
Oh, yeah, they're counting.
Countless hours. Huh? They didn't count the hours. You're not getting paid.
I also wanted to thank election staff for the effort that they put in to make sure the election cycle went smoothly, considering that we had brand new equipment that we were utilizing for the 2 elections. ITS, it's great to not have to rely on ITS because they do everything behind the scenes. So when there's an emergency, they're prepared, but we didn't have any emergency. So behind the scenes effort was fantastic. The county attorney's office, as always, we rely on them to answer those tough questions that come about. We'd like to thank them for always being on call. Facilities management for making all the transportation arrangements and getting all the elections equipment to and from our offices. And then just the administrative staff who helped support elections, particularly keeping us caffeinated, fed, and then supported. That was a great support on their behalf. Mr. Chairman, so going through the packet overall, before I get into the meat of the information here, I wanted to let you know that the county recorder and I will be developing a comprehensive report for the midterm elections to be presented to the board sometime in January and February. I'm just going to go through the results briefly to give you the highlights, but we'll go into that in more detail then. So the first letter that you see in the packet is the hand count letter. At the end of each election, if the party so choose, the elections office would have to conduct a hand count of the results based on a certain number of ballots per precinct. The parties chose, again, as they did in the primary, not to have a hand count for this election. So that's all we do is certify to the Secretary of State that the parties chose not to have a hand count. The next page that we go into, we just have the verified write-in results. Those results come directly from the write-in board. You have the next page is the one that you're certifying the results as the chairman of the Yuma County Board of Supervisors. Then I would turn over to the highlights for the statements of the votes cast. As I referenced earlier, we did achieve over 50% turnout for this election. We had 87,457 registered voters who cast 44,362 ballots. You can see the breakdown, which were cast on early voting, election day voting, late earlies, and provisionals. So early votes cast totaled 34,694. That's adding the early and the late earlies together. And then on election day, we processed a total of 8,975 ballots with 693 of the 845 provisionals being counted that would go toward that election day total. So, Mr. Chairman, those are the highlights of the canvass. The races are attached if you should have any specific questions, but otherwise I would defer to the board for any questions.
What are the low lights? Any low lights?
Yeah.
Any problem?
I would like to mention the low light.
Yeah.
Thank you for your accolades of the staff. It was well deserved. But something else that should be pointed out that I'd like to bring up to the public. Not only did they perform well, but they performed very well in the face of extreme verbal abuse from time to time. I'd like to just tell the public, they do a great job and they're doing their job. And to call and harangue and harass or show up in the office and just berate staff is uncalled for. And I hope it doesn't happen in the future. It probably will, but I wanted to put that out there. It frustrates me to no end to hear what our staff puts up with. And some of it is extreme. And there is no call for it. Robin, thank you, and Noida, your staff. It's got to be extremely difficult to remain professional and calm in the wake of some of the abuse I know that your staff took. So thank you for that.
Next time we'll have the sheriff department have a bigger part in the process. I said next time we probably ask the sheriff department to have a bigger part in the process.
Wow, it's on the phone too. It's just
Mr. Chairman, we did involve the sheriff's department very specifically this time based on, as you recall, during the primary, we had an incident at the recorder's office where law enforcement became involved. So we had sheriff's department support on site, throughout the entire day. So it was very appreciated.
All right. Well, I guess the only thing left to say is that, it's always better to prevent than it is to react to something happening. So we may have to make it a part of the preparation process to have, a more presence, higher presence there during, this particular time, especially during the few days, at the election day and probably a few days afterwards. Things get heated up.
Anything that the recorder wants to add? Or
anything that you'd like to add, Robin? About all the tools that we gave you to do such a great job.
Yeah. No, I think I'm fine. Chairman, members of the board, I want to comment on Supervisor McLeod's comment. I think the staff encountered a lot of challenges that I think were very unexpected. The environment a little bit different for the last few federal cycles, and the elections department and recorder's office were very responsive in handling a different environment every single day. Obviously, we were open for early voting for a long period of time. We had a lot of people vote in the office. I think it was around 1,400 people personally coming in, larger towards the last week. And it was immediate. If we needed something from elections, we needed a machine adjusted, printers, that type of thing. It was really interesting and very busy. And I have to say it was a little bit distracting. We had a lot of third party and special interest group interaction with voters that were providing inaccurate information to voters. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. And then our offices receive calls from voters that believe the information to be accurate. So it's difficult to work through those things as staff is trying to do their job every day. So I'm proud of the way we do elections despite the challenges I think we all know have occurred statewide. Yuma County, I think, should be super proud of the way that we conduct ourselves. And I'm very grateful for the staff that we have.
And we are.
Mr. Chairman and Robin and Paul, thank you for all the work you did on getting our new machines. Those new machines made the process for the voters quite a bit easier, and there weren't any huge long lines. There were some lines, but not huge long lines like in the past. And those machines worked beautifully. They were worth every penny that we spent on them to for the voters of Yuma County to be able to get through the process relatively painlessly. So, yeah.
And a word of caution: we have less than 2 years to get ready for a bigger one. And if you had any lines at all on this one, you can expect those lines to increase exponentially on the next one. So this process is it's a moving target type situation. So it needs to be, you need to sort of do like a end of the process type, sit down and say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what can we do better? Because the next one's going to be even larger.
Mr. Chairman, Reyes, members of the board, I think as Paul mentioned, we will be preparing a really extensive report. We're meeting next Monday to kind of go through a list that, employees kept, we kept, just to kind of go through the pros and cons of different procedures we had in place and any adjustments. But that preparation for 2020 started November 7th.
Yeah.
So
Right.
sadly, that's how long it takes to really get things in line. And I wanted to real quick mention your question on the first part of the meeting in regard to the hand count. The early ballot audit, separate from that requirement on hand count, there is an early ballot audit internally for the recorder's office and jointly done through a survey that's a federal requirement in December and January. So I didn't want it to be inferred that there isn't an early ballot audit. There's multiple audits that go through the early ballot process, received and counted, both from my office and then compared to the elections office.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more.
Just after Supervisor McLeod, who's been bugging me.
Oh, okay, go
Is there
ahead,
anything
Russell.
that
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
forgotten? And then
It dawned on me that we did leave one group of people out of this that work very hard in this process, and that is the poll workers.
Mm-hmm.
I always prefer to go to the polls on general election day. I walked in and they asked for my ID, and to my dismay and embarrassment, I didn't have one. I ended up finding it on my scanner at work where I had to scan it for something, but so I was kind of mortified, and they made that just not a big deal.
I hope they didn't
They
let you bug.
told me the
Leave and come back with your
I
ID.
did.
They made him come back with 3.
No, I had to go out to my car and get some documents out of my car that were readily available and should be by law. And so they made that embarrassing, startling moment.
I hope to
actually
see it in the
pleasurable.
report.
And
Highlighted.
But besides that, there's a lot of poll workers that we rely on, and so we're very grateful for them. They did a great job at the poll I was at. I'm sure they did elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And Susan, and everybody.
I'd like to make a point of thanking Paul Melcher for jumping back in as interim elections director for the second time. I think he's getting it down pat, so we'll see where that goes from here. Paul is actually going to be taking over the new position for economic development and intergovernmental affairs, but he is going to continue working with elections through the completion of this process. So I do appreciate his assistance with that.
Just
for sure.
Yep.
Just,
I'm glad it's not,
just
salary
a
time.
question, just a question on the report that you guys will be putting together. Are we gonna hear, like, how can we make it, or for your department, easier? Will that be included, or?
Some recommendations?
Additional.
Yeah.
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, Paul and I have discussed several times just kind of keeping notes. Every time we've even had a conversation, we're taking a minute to write down the pieces we talk about, or ideas or reflections. And so yes, I think we'll kind of be able to hash out all of that and be able to give you probably a very extensive report. There's a lot of moving parts, and make sure you take some time to have that conversation, because I think there's a lot of pieces that we want to discuss. And just as a side note, as Paul mentioned, Sheriff Wilmot did have his staff available. They actually met with us pre-election to plan with elections and the recorder's office, and they were so helpful and followed up with us to see if we had any issues, concerns prior to election day, and a few days after election day we had gotten an email just to make sure everything was good. So I very much appreciate that, because in the office on election day, everyone is it's hectic, and they were very responsive to both of us.
Good. Supervisor Bancroft.
Mr. Chairman, I was fortunate enough to be able to help this time. I got to be a receiver of the precinct, the vote centers of the ballots.
Like a greeter?
A greeter, yeah, a receiver. I got to get the ballots and help count them before they went to be actually counted, to make sure that
don't do that in the general. I wouldn't have let it.
Oh, you guys. I have to say, we need to discuss additional staff for these two areas, even if it's only during the election cycle, because if they were running like crazy with 47 or over 50%, 44,000 people voting, and it's going to be even higher on a presidential year, and I can't imagine how they can do it all without some additional support. So we need to discuss that.
And maybe a question that I would have is how expensive would it be to turn more of those polling places into like a super voting centers. In other words, that people can go anywhere, not just the Civic Center, not just in San Luis, or not just over, but how much costlier would it be to turn those almost any one of our centers into a super center where people can vote anywhere they're at? That would be a question that you don't have to answer now. It's a question that I would like to have an answer to, because as we reduce the number of polling places, there's more of the possibility that people complain that I can't get to it, or you made them too few, and they're not, they're too far. And
Did we
so,
receive that kind of complaint?
well, no, but remember, you're talking, again, you're talking a midterm. Yeah, I'm talking about a general, where there's going to be more people going to more places or trying to go to do this. Although I realize that early voting is taking more and more, of those numbers in, I still believe that, you're probably going to need more help after the election now than you do during the election to count those ballots and to go through that process, because obviously the timeframes where people want a result, I mean, we're in an instant society. We want to know right now, and it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, to actually count, because again, you have the same number of people, that are during the election as afterwards, and you figured, okay, well, that's all it's going to take. It's probably going to take you to hire people after the election to help you go through that process.
Chairman Reyes, members of the board, I found it interesting looking at, and these are numbers I think you'll hear when we have a more expansive report to the board, but in 2012, the presidential election, I think that was a presidential election, and I think our numbers on early ballots were a lot higher than that presidential election, but keeping in mind this was a midterm election, and our numbers for early ballots processed was 79% higher than we did in 2014. Paul's numbers for at the polls was almost 100% higher, because they almost doubled the number of people appearing at the polling at the vote centers. And those are some of the numbers I'm personally pretty taken back by and excited to share all of those statistics with you, because it is changed
Eye opener,
a lot.
yeah. It's an eye opener.
Thank you, Yuma
All right.
County, for voting.
Okay, enough with the accolades. Let's get it done.
Well,
Okay.
one more thing, Mr.
One
Chair.
more thing?
Robin, when you do your presentation, I would appreciate if you could include what the complexities are that you run into.
Most of the
It's
presentation will
incredible.
be that.
Well, okay, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Robin. Paul, stay up here just in case, because we haven't finished this yet. So we have a canvassing, which requires for us to approve the canvassing to make them official. Fortunately, the right party won, so we won't get an audit or something, whatever. But so let's move on. Is there a motion?
Move to censure the chairman for his comment.
Hey,
Move to
it's a
accept the
comment.
canvas as presented.
Is there a second? Second. Oh, okay, hold on. There was a motion by Supervisor McLeod, a second by Supervisor Porches, who won by just a hair, which I don't use those expressions often, but he won by just a hair. There's been a motion and a second to approve the result, to canvass and approve the results of the election, November 6, 2018 general election. Is there any discussion on the motion? No discussion on the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Paul. And the next item is Public Works. It's discussion and direction of public road acceptance and maintenance program. We got the flood control after that. Dang it.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Josh Scott, Public Works Director. So this will be the third installment of the public road maintenance discussion. We've had a couple previously, at least one of those was a joint presentation with Roger Patterson from engineering. The timing seems to be right since we last talked about this. I've had several calls about maintaining these public roads, and I know at least a few board members have as well. So I'll just quickly kind of recap some of our previous discussion, and then I'll talk some about proposed criteria for accepting public roads. So just kind of a quick refresher, before we can spend public money on road maintenance, it has to be accepted into our system. And there's two options in the statutes to do that. The first is for the board to establish a roadway as a county highway. And the second is for the board to make a factual determination that a road was laid out, opened, and constructed at no cost to the county and in accordance with county standards. So this is where we kind of focus some of our discussion at the last presentation. And there is an exception for pre-1990 roads that were not constructed to county standards. But in any case, they have to be accepted into our maintenance system before we can budget money for them. A couple of things just to remind you of in the statute, the word may there. Maintenance is at the board's discretion. And just because a road has been accepted into our maintenance system doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be maintained. The board has to authorize the expenditure of county funds first. The second is public roads. I've touched on this in earlier presentations, but what we're discussing today is public rights of way. These are roads that have been dedicated to the public, not to the county. They're not county declared highways. These are typically unimproved roadways in residential areas. So I've used this flow chart before. It's just kind of a quick summary of the process for the board to make that factual determination about a road being laid out, opened, and constructed. And even if it wasn't constructed to county standards, again, there's that June 13, 1990 exception in the statute.
Josh, I'm sorry, would you go back to the public right-of-way and county right-of-way? And just clarify what that means for maintenance?
So if it's right-of-way that's been dedicated to the county and there's a roadway improved or surface within it, we can budget for maintenance.
Oh, I'm sorry, so the public being a private?
Private.
It's been dedicated for public use. So it functions a lot like an easement. It's not dedicated to the county. It's been dedicated to the public. For
access roads, I mean, a lot of that happens. We consider them private, but once they're dedicated for the public use to have access, they're normally access roads. You know, they're built to access properties, public
Usually
property.
farmers.
Correct. Yeah.
Dirt roads
Or
and stuff, right?
or people who build, you know,
in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
You can.
If we bring them into the maintenance system, and that's something.
And do they have to be built to standard to bring them in, or is that at the board's discretion?
There's an exception for roads that were constructed prior to June 13, 1990.
Right, I understand that.
After that, it would have had to have been built to county standard.
On a public right-of-way, okay. And a county right-of-way will have been built to standard then?
Yeah, typically, or if it's a declared county highway, the board would formally declare it a county highway, and by virtue of being a county highway, automatically becomes eligible for county.
For scheduled maintenance.
Right, okay, thank you.
Just a reminder of what we do currently maintain. We've got about 1,400 miles of roadway in our inventory, but we only maintain about 910 of those miles. So that leaves about 463 miles of roads out there that don't currently receive any maintenance. Of those roads that we don't currently maintain, there's about 126 miles of that subdivision public right-of-way. So these are the roads you get those calls about from your constituents. Rural areas typically, half-mile, quarter-mile stretches, right-of-way that's been dedicated to the public via subdivision from a deed or something to that effect. And they're typically not constructed to county standard, if constructed at all. So that makes them ineligible to receive county maintenance because, again, historically the board has not accepted those types of roadways into our maintenance system. And one thing just to kind of keep in mind as I move forward is these types of roads often have drainage issues associated with them because they were not constructed to county standards. So that obviously contributes to the degradation of the roads as well, and perhaps our financial stake in this.
Do you have a dating system, not a dating system, a system to date the subdivision so that you know which ones were built before 1990 and which ones were built after?
Yeah, so of those 1,400 miles of roads I mentioned that are in our inventory, engineering keeps and the right-of-way section keeps a running list of those. Those actually get reported to the state on a fairly regular basis. So we know typically when a road was dedicated. There's a few older ones out there that, you know, blank in that space, but, you know, further research, we may be able to address that.
Okay.
But most of them, we do know when the right-of-way was dedicated. So if the county can't maintain the road, what options do the residents have? Right now, there's 4. First one is the do nothing alternative. Again, not a very popular one. The road will just continue to degrade. Residents can get together and hire a contractor to come in and do the maintenance on their roadway. They can also hire a contractor to improve a road to county standards, at which point then typically the board has accepted those types of roads and scheduled maintenance for them. Or the residents can establish an improvement district. This is the one we try and steer most people to now. This is about the best option they've got. Currently, we have several iterations of this have been done. There's a roadway maintenance improvement district out at Martinez Lake. Those roads aren't built to county standards, and the improvement district out there takes care of the maintenance. We had 8 pre-1975 subdivisions out there that formed an improvement district, brought their roads up to county standards. The county subsequently accepted those roads, and they do receive maintenance. And then we had 3 improvement districts. This is a long time ago now, but they actually paid the county to make the improvements to their roadways. And I wouldn't recommend that today. We've got certain dollar thresholds and things like that we have to stay under when it's considered construction. That could get kind of dicey.
What about the labor, Josh, on the last one? Did the county
We did
provide
it.
the
Yeah, county provided
equipment and labor?
My understanding is yes, and it was all done on overtime, so the residents paid to have this done. You know,
So they
So they paid the cost of labor as well?
yeah, outside of normal.
Oh, that's kind of hard to do now, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it could be one of those things that we can add to the potential acceptance process.
Yeah, so, and that's my reason for being here today. So based on the previous discussions we've had, I'm kind of proposing a 5th option, and that would be a path to board acceptance of these roads into the county maintenance system. So just at a high level, the program would need to set some maintenance expectations. You know, we're not talking about Highway 95, so residents would have to understand it's going to receive a lower level of maintenance. The program needs to have some eligibility criteria that would help ensure that our resources are focused where they're legitimately needed. And then the program would lay out a formalized acceptance process. And I'd also recommend a mileage cap on this. I mentioned we've got another 126 miles of these types of roads out there. I would prefer to ramp this up as opposed to just, boom, here's 126 miles to take care of next year. And I'll get into a little more detail on this.
I see it.
First, the expectations. Staff's recommendation on what residents might expect under the proposed program. Typically, these are going to be low-volume roads utilized mostly by passenger vehicles. So it's going to consist of minor grading up to 3 times per year to remove washboards and dips, make the road passable, a little more comfortable to drive. Wouldn't include regular reshaping. Roads in our gravel road maintenance program, we target reshaping those annually. These types of roads, I would recommend, it may need a reshape upon initial acceptance, but we wouldn't be in there doing that annually. We'd add material to the road to fill in some low spots and washouts if we had them, but we wouldn't do a regular recapping with new gravel, again, like we do for roads in our gravel road maintenance program. And we apply a dust palliative up to once a year if traffic warranted it, to where dust became an issue in some of these areas.
It will be.
So then we kind of get into the meat of it, and that's the eligibility criteria. What would make a road eligible for the board to accept it? So here's staff's recommendations, and this is where I'd like some of the discussion to focus. So if there's something up here you don't like or that may be missing, These are the highlights. First off, it's got to comply with statute. So it's got to have been laid out, open, and constructed prior to June 13, 1990. I mean, I think that's a given. Without that, statute would prevent us from taking that roadway in. Need to be free of obstacles and hazards on the roadway. We don't want to get into a situation where we're taking on additional liability or expense by having hazards we need to clear or something to make that road safe and passable. Got to be wide enough for 2 lanes of traffic. I think that's probably a given. We need to be able to get traffic in and out there. Must have adequate drainage. We want to make sure there's not significant issues. If there are, we're likely looking at having to alter the line or grade of the road, and that becomes an engineering issue and can turn into a full-blown project pretty quick. Roads must be in continuous use. We don't want to end up maintaining a road that's used seasonally or only sporadically. We're looking to bookend the daily traffic as well, a minimum of 15 vehicles to demonstrate the continuous use, and an upper end of 400. At that point, we're probably looking at recommending a different treatment type or option for that road. At 400 vehicles a day, it starts to become more significant and may need a higher level of maintenance. The road must connect to another maintained roadway, county roadway, ADOT roadway, city roadway, so that we do have continuous maintenance along that segment or stretch. Must serve a minimum number of dwelling units. We don't want to end up maintaining a roadway that functions as a private driveway if there's one resident on it. So we've got some criteria there. And we're suggesting that any single property owner along the roadway have no more than a 20% interest in the land that abuts the road. That's to try and prevent us from getting into a situation where we're doing a developer's job, maintaining and constructing a roadway. At that point, we probably ought to be deferring to development services and schedule.
Ask you a question before you leave. This is a very good effort, but it's not going to really deal with the majority of the problems we now have. The majority of the problems we now have are with people moving into the county, into some remote area of the county, and then we're making changes to the zoning, that allows people to build a house every 2 acres or 5 acres and so on and so forth, and that is allowing people to sort of go into an area that wasn't developed prior, and there is no public right-of-ways, or there's easements. We could, ask them to create an easement, so we have to give everybody access to the properties. And then more than 5 or 6 or 7 people live in that area over time. But that time isn't really the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. It's actually the 2000s and 1990. From 1990 this way, we've seen the biggest explosion in growth. Before that, it was kind of slow and methodical. So if this particular statute, 286-705, says that if it wasn't before 1990, that this road was dedicated as a public right-of-way, it's not going to help us much. It's going to help us in some cases, in some specific cases of people who've been there a long time. But the majority of the problems that I get, the constituency that I get, simply comes from the fact that people move out in the county because they don't want taxes, they don't want this, they don't want sewer, they move out in the county, and then they move in bunches, so one area becomes very nice, and so people keep moving into that area. And all of a sudden, you have 10 people, and they're driving through somebody's, front yard, and it becomes an issue. The problem is, I don't think not the problem. I'm okay with this. But what I like to do is try to figure out a way to deal with the current problem that we're having with some places where the population has increased so much that we're not going to have this problem, but we're not going to have a solution, at least not this way. We're going to have to emphasize to some people that this is not, necessarily going to solve their problem, that most of them are going to have to go to an improvement district with, they're going to have to skip the courtesy maintenance issue because statute prohibits us to put money into those, into those areas. We may not be able to do the improvement necessary because it would be considered spending money on that area. So while I appreciate the effort and I think we're going the right way, we may not be, through this process, we may not be getting to the meat of the problem.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there I'd like to address. One is the zoning piece of this. You know, that's handled at DDS, but they do try and assure that everybody's got access, that it's dedicated properly. Now, if you have a whole bunch of easements that have been dedicated that are kind of daisy chained along so that it looks like a public right-of-way or a roadway, correct, it won't address those kinds of things. But the roadways I've gotten calls about in the last year, and I think that you have as well, Supervisor Simmons, those would all qualify under this. They were dedicated to the public prior to that 1990 deadline.
That's why I asked the initial question, if you had a sort of an idea of what was prior to 1990 and what wasn't, because I may be, I may be looking at a situation that is developed over time, but has, the ability to be solved through this process, where I'm thinking, okay, well.
And I'm certain there's going to be some that wouldn't be eligible because of that cutoff, that 1990 date, and we can continue to look at it.
No, it's fine. Let's take it one step at a time. This is a good step in the right direction. It may not solve all the problems, but it's going to solve some of them, or at least not solve some of them. Give us an opportunity to look at some.
Right, it'll give you the chance to look at it.
All right,
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Supervisor?
Yeah, I have a question, Josh. I received a communication from a constituent that lives along County 13 and a half. And we don't maintain that currently, but I would have to assume it was in existence prior to 1990, because that was all farm ground then. Does this open up the possibility of them bringing that into the maintenance system for roadways like that? County 13, the halves and the quarters that exist all throughout the county.
It would. So that's where the board would make that factual determination of whether the road was laid out, opened, and constructed. So laid out, meaning it was surveyed or mapped. And, a lot of these areas are platted back to,
the 70s, 60s, yeah.
And so in each of these, will you be bringing that back to the board for the board's determination then?
Correct.
You're not able to make that determination as a director. You've got to bring it back to the board.
Yes, that has to be a factual determination by the board.
Yeah, thank you.
The criteria on the last slide would kind of be the minimum criteria to consider a road eligible. But there's some other things I think that should be taken into account when these things would be brought to the board for discussion. Like if a road crosses a wash and is subject to flooding, it could easily require additional work, a higher level of maintenance or even the installation of structures to try and pass flows. Is there alternate access? That should be looked at as well, particularly one that may not have drainage issues or wash crossings, but some instances it may make sense to maintain a parallel road as opposed to the one requested, so that's something to consider. And a road may not meet the minimum dwelling unit requirements that were proposed on the previous slide, but if it serves a government facility or utility facility, I think that's worth noting and considering as well, particularly if it's a critical facility, water or power related. And then finally, the current roadway condition. We just need to know what we're getting into when we accept a road, what kind of shape it's currently in, what it's going to take to get it up to expectations, and then how much it's going to cost to maintain it. So here's where we get into the description of the process. So assuming the residents accept those maintenance expectations and the road meets the eligibility criteria, this will allow us to get it into the maintenance system and for us to start maintaining it. Staff feels it should be driven by the residents. This isn't a determination I want to make. The residents should file a petition. We'd be looking for a majority of signatures of those landowners that abut the road. At that point, staff would validate those signatures on the petition, determine the eligibility criteria, determine that it meets the eligibility criteria, and if so, we would go out and inspect the road and prepare a report to the board confirming eligibility, the initial roadway condition, recommended corrective maintenance, budgetary estimates for corrective and long-term preventative maintenance, and any other relevant information we see during the inspection. At that point, we would schedule it for BOS consideration.
Okay.
So to Supervisor McLeod's question, the board approval would have two parts. First would be the factual determination that road was laid out, opened, and constructed prior to that 1990 deadline. And the second would be formal acceptance of that road into the county's maintenance system. Again, to set expectations, if the road's accepted, it's staff's recommendation that it remain unpaved unless an improvement district is formed to bring it up to county standards. We don't want to accept it as a dirt road and then start dealing with requests to improve the surface.
I like this to be a process so we can actually find a way to help out. But I don't want this to be a situation where this would preclude us from paving a road without, the residents nearby, forming a petition. There are a bunch of roads out in my district, for example, where you have paved road and then it ends on Avenue A, and then there's no paved road until Avenue B. And, there are portions in there that, to me, technically, they should be in a capital improvement process where you're paving, you're essentially getting to a point where you're paving all these half-mile roads, and that I wouldn't like this process to preclude us from making that decision, and it wouldn't, would it?
If there was a desire to take it from, say, a dirt road to a paved road, yeah, there'd be additional discussion and probably an additional action by the board. So you've got a requirement out there that we can't improve the surface of some of these roads. We can't.
Well, you're
add
talking about
asphalt.
public right-of-ways. I'm talking about county right-of-ways, right? That doesn't impact the county
It
right-of-way?
doesn't impact county right of way.
Right.
So if the board
That's
declares
fine,
it
that's
a
fine.
county right of way
Yeah,
or
I
a
got you.
county highway,
Yeah,
then
you cleared it out. We're talking about public right-of-way and turning it into county maintenance. Okay, so good. I was just a little.
Mr. Chairman, we're still talking about pre-1990.
Yes, we are.
No matter what.
Okay, okay,
That's the law right now.
got it. I know, but I just wanted to make sure.
it's also likely that these would be new roads coming into the system that Public Works probably is budget for maintenance for those roads. So at the time we bring an action to you for consideration, we may ask that contingency money be brought up so that we can address the maintenance on these additional roadways. And then the road will be designated primitive if eligible. Again, there's a separate statute related to primitive roads. That's a liability issue, so if it does meet those criteria, we would post it as primitive at the same time. Again, it's at the board's discretion. Once a road's into our maintenance system, I don't see a way to get it out of the maintenance system if the board or future boards decided they didn't want to do this anymore. But they could do away with the program and then just decide to either fund a reduced level of maintenance or no maintenance at all for public roads. I mentioned mileage cap as a recommendation. We've got 126 miles of these roads out there. It would be a strain on our resources to try and take on all 126 at once. So staff's recommendation is to pilot the program and then phase it in. This will give us time to budget and procure additional equipment, FTEs if required. And then I'm comfortable with about 15 miles a year. That would allow us adequate time to get our budget requests in, get through the budget process, and then procure equipment to keep up with. The rule of thumb we have in Public Works is about 40 miles of roadway before we have to add another grader route. So we'd be looking to have to do that about every 3 years or so if the board chose to take in that max of 15 miles. And then I'm a big fan of piloting new projects and programs before, going full tilt. So I'm suggesting 7 miles that first year. And I think we'd learn a lot about the demand for bringing those roads into our system, how many are eligible, what the financial burden might be, and then the time commitment associated with maintaining those roads. That'll give us an idea of if we need to add staff or FTEs to address those. And 7 may not sound like a lot, but based on the calls I've gotten over the past few months, some of the roads I've talked to you all about, that totals up to about 4 miles of road. It's a half-mile segment here, a quarter-mile segment there. We aren't talking about 10 or 15 miles worth all at one shot. During some of the previous discussion, Supervisor Simmons has brought up some of the Dayland area roads. There are a lot of roads, public roads out there, but it's low density. There's really only about a mile to a mile and a half that would need to be addressed in order to get those residents to a road that's already being maintained, primarily Ventura Road in that area.
All right. Oh, maintenance costs. Yeah.
So some numbers here. These are estimated costs per mile associated with the maintenance expectations I mentioned earlier. Minor grading up to 3 times per year. Could be more or less depending on the amount of traffic, but adding some material to fill in potholes and low spots, that's 2 to 3 cubic yards of material per year. Applying that dust palliative if necessary. So all told, we're looking at somewhere between $3,200 and $8,500 a mile. $8,500 would be the dust palliative and a few loads of material and all of that. If we did a 7-mile pilot program, I'd recommend budgeting somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 for that. That's kind of in between the high and the low estimate, but that would be enough to get us going, and then we'd be collecting data at that point on how much it's really costing to address these. At 15 miles a year, you're looking at about $88,000 a year if these numbers hold during the pilot program that we would have to budget for every 15 miles. $88,000. So there's also a capital cost. What's that?
About $100,000.
Yeah, but that would be if you don't buy the equipment.
Right, and so there's also a capital cost. We got those 40 miles, give or take, of roadway before we need to add another grader route. So this would be something we'd have to do probably every 3 years, and you're looking at a motor grader, a water truck, and a roller for about $423,000. So,
oh, is that all?
Yeah, and he wants it every 3 years. It's going to cost us more for equipment to do the road.
Again, that's assuming we took in the max of 15 miles per year, but
we get it.
You annualize that cost and you're around $52,000, $53,000 a year. So you add that to.
What about personnel?
You add that to the previous slide for personnel costs and all of that, and it brings your per mile cost up to about $7,000 per mile. To maintain these roads. That includes the capital purchase and the regular maintenance activity.
All right. Sorry.
You mentioned something about the cost to do this pilot. Are you talking about budgeting in the next budget session, or finding the money now so we can start the program at the beginning of the year?
That would be up to you. We've got contingency money there to cover the 40,000. I would just probably approach it as when we brought these items to you for consideration, ask for some of those dollars to be moved out of contingency and up into our line items so we could address.
Okay. And then notification of the public. Do you rely on the supervisors that when we get a complaint, explain the process? Do you have, for lack of a better term, a database of people who have contacted you? How do you want to start that?
We keep track of those that call Public Works. Engineering keeps track of folks that call them as well if they don't get routed to us. So we certainly be able to get the word out that way.
Okay.
Oh, don't worry about it. People will find out soon.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And start
This
with
is,
that.
I'd be surprised if you don't, if you don't get a rush once they find out there's a way to do it.
My next step would be to come back with a document, a formal program for you all to consider.
That would be.
So if you've got any feedback on the criteria or the process or something like that,
I do.
then that would be something we could provide.
Oh, look, I'm gonna let him go first, but I do have a couple of questions.
I would think that when they contact Public Works, when this process is started, do let them know about the primitive road signage, because a lot of people were very unhappy when those signs went up. So they need to understand there's going to be a sign go up on their street calling the road primitive. And it was difficult for people to swallow that. It was pretty contentious. We put a bunch up, particularly in the foothills area, if you recall that. I know the
Yeah, people
supervisor
don't
out there at the
understand.
time
Yeah.
remembers it well.
It would be part of the program document.
yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
because it would be something we'd do if the road met the criteria for that. So much like the improvement district process, this is, again, going to be driven by residents. We want them to come in and initiate the process. So what I envision is a discussion, much like we do with folks that want to do an improvement district, is sit down with the neighborhood residents, go through the packet of information, letting them know what the eligibility criteria is, the steps in the process, and then what they can expect as far as the level of maintenance, those
Designation.
road signs going up and what that designation means.
Good.
It's an education. It's an educational process. We're gonna have to educate them as we go along. The question I had, are you done?
Yes, thank you.
Weird, but you know, okay.
You know what?
You know, it's
Because
never
of the way
done.
he
You're never
treats
done.
me,
You're never
we will
done.
not accept any in South County.
The question I had to do with the 20% cap. You know, some of those areas out there, there may be an owner that has like 30%, and then there's, you know, a bunch of smaller owners. I find that a little difficult to deal with. I could understand 50% or something that implied that the majority of the improvement was going to benefit one single homeowner. But an improvement district, it doesn't really matter because you pay a prorated share anyway, based upon what you own, right?
If it's an improvement district, yes.
Yeah, it's improvement. But that's what I'm saying. You know, this is a vehicle to get to an improvement district. I wouldn't like to.
No. This would be in lieu of. an
That's
improvement
fine. Well,
district.
yeah, but I mean, eventually we're gonna tell people, look, you know, this is going to be a primitive road where we're going to do some very low grade type improvements and then maintenance, you know, sort of like courtesy maintenance type thing. You need to emphasize, we need to emphasize to these people that their solution isn't, you know, that's a short-term solution. You need to emphasize that the long-term solution is for them to improve it to county standards so we can take it in, and that would, you know, that would solve the problem over the long term. And again, I'm going back only to, or trying to get back only to that 20%. I think we need to leave some flexibility in there. It may be 23%, it may be 25%. I know you want to put a cap on it, but I don't know if 20% ownership of a 1 mile segment of road or a half mile segment of road, it's that difficult to meet out in the county. I mean, you know, there would be more people.
And I'm certainly open to discussion on that. I looked at a lot of other counties' policies. I found that most counties had initiated a policy similar or something like that, and then they've withdrawn it since. But
really?
we're going to go down that path. So the 20% was one I found in a couple different policies, and after some discussion with the engineering group, it seemed to make sense. But if you want to make it more or less,
Well, I just wanted to
me,
be, to allow some flexibility for a situation where you may have some owner that has 25%, and then, you know, there's 5 or 6 more owners in there, and you just have a smaller parcels. It just, there's so many different situations out there.
One of the things we talked about during these discussions was these subdivisions in Dayton, where, you know, you have a whole square mile that's been subdivided, but 80% of it's owned by a development company out of Canada or something.
80% is too much.
Well,
I mean, you know,
but,
20%, that's where I didn't want to get into, you know, the 20, you know, like I said, 51% ownership to me kills it anyway. I mean, that person, you know, needs to, or that entity needs to take care of it. But 20% seemed to be low to me in terms of the situations that we have out in the county where the parcels are so large, you know. That's it. I mean, there's no, I don't have, you know, it's a way to get to some of these, you know, situations that, you know, gives us a path to help out. And obviously we want to help out a group of homeowners, not just 2 or 3 homeowners, but a group of homeowners. But I'm concerned that some of these parcels and some of this length of some of these roads are just so long that, you know, some farmer may have, 35% of it, and then there's 5 homes at the end of that road, and they can't do anything because, there's a farmer there that wants to continue farming, and he's got 35% of the land base, the land
Mr. Chairman?
holding, yes.
I appreciate your position. I think it would be simple enough that we would have a policy that would allow the director to bring one to us that exceeds the 20%. And, that you have a reason to say, yeah, the board might want to consider this. I think that should be part of our policy, that you have
Some
the ability to
flexibility.
bring
I
to us
just-
something that has an
Over and above
exception.
that, yeah.
Right. The threshold can remain at 20, but the director will be given discretion to bring any other ones that you may feel are worthy of us to take a look at.
That works.
That works for me.
I just didn't want to set, percentage and then say that's it. That was it. Any other questions? Yeah, Supervisor
I have a
Borges?
question. On the primitive roads, there is maintenance, huh? At some time or none?
No,
It goes either way, I think.
Supervisor Porches, you have to separate the two. The primitive road statute does not mention maintenance at all. So it's merely a designation that puts the public on notice that this road
There is no maintenance.
may or may not be maintained, that maybe some hazardous driving conditions, that kind of thing.
It's a protection thing.
Does not
It's a
mention
liability thing.
maintenance.
It doesn't mention whether you can or not. You can do it.
But we can do it.
We can maintain.
We can maintain.
Primitive road.
Yes,
Yeah,
as
that's
long
what
as it
it's
meets the
about.
statute.
We can take it in, but they're going to sign it.
Well, because this is my problem. There's a lot of signs primitive road signs in subdivisions, and I know some of them have been maintained, just lately. I mean, and I'm grateful for that, but they hadn't been for the longest time, and that's people in those neighborhoods talking, letting me know.
They normally mention me along the way,
Well,
but
yeah,
it's okay. I don't get it.
I won't say it, but it is. But
we won't mention what they say.
So
Just
my
don't say,
question
don't
is,
tell them, don't give any details about what they say about it. Just say,
my question is, I think if we're gonna be looking at this or trying to bring in roads, I think the ones that are in residential areas that have that sign, primitive road, I think those are the ones that I think we need to start looking in and bringing them in first, because there you have, I mean, the density there, it's high. They're within the city.
Well, they wouldn't be ours anyway.
it wouldn't be out within the city.
All
mean
the islands,
Oh,
they're within the city, they're
county islands.
Okay,
Yeah,
they're county islands.
Well,
Oh, okay, they're not.
well,
they're-
guys,
Well, yeah.
it's
but-
not the county out there, but they're within the city, and I mean, it's just the density there. It's a lot of people there that live there, so they use it daily. So I'm thinking that those are the ones that we really need to start looking into.
Or
And-
improvement
and,
district. Is that like,
I mean, and when I'm saying it's maintenance, I mean, I get calls that, hey, how come they haven't covered this pothole? And I know they've done that, so I'm kind of confused as to if we do or we don't.
Well, Supervisor Porches, again, we need to separate the primitive road statute from the maintenance statute, two separate things. But are you referring to roads that are paved?
Yeah, they're paved.
Okay, so right now, with very few exceptions, the county maintains almost all the paved roads, across the county. They're almost all in our maintenance system, with the exception of.
But not subdivision roads that weren't constructed to standard.
ese es el problema.
That's the difference. They weren't constructed to standard, so we can't.
We didn't accept them. They were done
There's-
before.
There's some pre-1975
that's what you're
subdivisions out there that did receive some courtesy maintenance before these statutes started going into effect. So we have continued some level of maintenance out there. May not be the same level that a more recent subdivision gets, but I think those are the ones you're describing, the Crane area.
The Crane area, that Colonia area from
The Orange
C
Grove
and D,
area.
the Orange Grove, and that's another one that I want to. But those are the roads that the ones that get a lot of traffic.
use, yeah.
And it's the density. I mean, you can't compare to 2 acres when there's only 10 acres and there was developed or zoned 2 acre parcels. That's only 5. When we have in 1 acre here, we have 6 houses. Just in one. So
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I
about
wanna-
priorities. I guess what we're getting to is about
Yeah.
priorities,
So
right?
the county
It's-
already has the ability to go in and maintain those roadways.
We
It would
already
just
have
be, if that's the board's desire, then, you know, that needs to go into the budget request for next year. That's how the board will authorize the
okay.
expenditure.
And we're lucky Supervisor Simmons isn't here, otherwise he'd be arguing about 25 different roadways.
Well, and I'm just saying, and if this is the time, that's what
Yeah,
I
no,
want
that's fine.
at least the board to know
Consider.
that, because it's the density, it's a lot higher, and it's people that live there for
30 years.
more than
40
past the 70s, you know, before the 70s. So, and a lot of the times they haven't been getting that. So
Yeah.
I just want us to look at that and consider those that be on the top of the list.
I think as the chairman pointed out, it's about priorities. So
Priority,
if there was a presentation to the board on a particular half mile or 1 mile segment
Then you
of
get to discuss.
unpaved road, that would be the time to have that discussion
Yeah.
and determine if.
Yeah, the fact is, the problem is right now is that we don't have a process, and this is what establishes the process.
Mhm.
Then we as supervisors discuss the priorities, you know, and where we're going to put more attention to and where we're going to put money into. And I think that that's a different level. This is just giving us a pathway to get to those, you know, issues and make a decision on them. And I think that's already a it's big advancement compared to what we used to do in the past, which is refuse to listen to any request for any improvements in an area that wasn't county right away, simply because we always felt that if we did one, we'd have to do everyone. And, you know, how do you pick which ones to go first, right? This is the issue. We didn't have a way because it was the way, yeah, we didn't have a process because we didn't want to deal with it. We just said, look, we can't, you know, budget-wise, we can't put the money out there that way. Now that we get into a point where road improvements are becoming much, much more highly visible areas that we're paying attention to, that process is needed to be able to weed out a lot of the stuff and be able to get it to us so we can make a decision on those. All right?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes? Sorry.
Thank you. Josh, you piqued my interest. You kind of threw out there that other counties that you looked at had instituted policy and then have since rescinded that. Did they give you
an
any
idea why?
indication as to why that was? I mean, obviously there was some headache created, and so they went back. What kind of pile might we be stepping into?
In Arizona, like Navajo County was one.
I just way too big.
Their maintenance costs are gonna be more, typically as you get into those
Big.
counties, they're quite a ways away from
Distances.
water, as opposed to us here in Yuma, who have the luxury of, you know,
Water
having a
everywhere.
canal all
Yeah.
over the place. So, you know, that
It's a cost factor. It just
it
became very
certainly is.
costly.
We don't have to deal with snow removal, things like that. So, you know, we're talking about 15 miles here, and what that impact is, it's gonna be, you know.
Especially if we can put some of those miles into areas like you're talking about.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
All right, it's time to vote.
Just one more, just one more.
Jesus.
What's your hurry?
Go ahead.
I got 15 more questions.
You know, we have ladies here waiting for a zoning matter. We should have taken the zoning matter first and getting them out of here. You know, they don't need to listen to all this stuff.
That'd be a quick one. You know, I know I've always talked about the Orange Grove area, and it's not in my district.
I keep trying to push it to his district. It won't take.
But, you know, there's certain areas of that subdivision, or both of them, that were paved. So I'm just looking back and thinking, when those areas, obviously there was an improvement district formed at that time, because I know the county didn't do it. And you weren't here?
No, it was private landowners. They subdivided without a subdivision.
No, but I mean, it was an improvement district that was formed to pave it, because obviously,
No.
I believe so. There was only few people that paid, or the ones that where the roads are paved, they paid for it. The two roads that are not paved, they didn't want to be in that improvement district.
I never
Yeah.
saw.
So when those roads were paved, they had to be at the county standards. They had to. If not, the county messed up. I don't know who was the engineer or what happened, but they had to be, because in order for them to, someone just get.
Nobody
someone
pays.
pay.
No, they
No.
don't. You're
No,
confused.
They weren't accepted?
No,
If they
there's
weren't-
a
if they
bunch
weren't
of
built to
subdivisions.
standard, they're
Yeah.
not accepted.
Look, you have to file a
But-
subdivision plat to have
Uh-huh.
the county accept the road
But
in a
when they,
subdivision.
he
could
just mentioned like in Martinez Lake, obviously when they pave a road, they form an improvement district, they're gonna pave the road and they're gonna try to do it to the county standards.
No.
Not necessarily?
Martinez Lake is not built to county
No, it's
standards.
not.
They have an improvement district board out there that,
It makes
that
improvements,
takes those
okay.
assessments,
Yeah,
and then they
They can do
contract
whatever
out
the
the
hell they
maintenance
want
of
to,
those
yeah.
roads. The county is not involved in the
No,
maintenance
let's
of
look at the percentage.
anything except for the Martinez Lake Road right up to the.
I think that
So
clears
the
out.
county had, I
Doesn't
mean,
have-
I can just go out there and pave
Create an
a
improvement
road, create,
district, yeah.
I mean, on my own. And if the county wants to come and tell me, no, you can't do this, I'm gonna say, hey,
It's a public.
it's mine.
It's
You
a
don't-
private.
It's a public right of way, you've got to
Uh-huh.
get an
That's right,
encroachment
but it's not
permit or
public right
something.
away.
but
They're
that's
private
about
roads.
it.
Pero, o sea,
You don't have to, you can do any kind of improvement, with an improvement district, you can do any kind of improvement. If you want the county to take over the maintenance and take over that, it has to meet county standards. But other than that, you
well,
can,
that's my question. At that time when it was paved,
no way.
I just wanna
Yes,
find
way.
out if it was built to the county standards, because if it was, the county
Why
should have
isn't it
taken it in. Why
maintained?
isn't it in
Yeah.
the county's,
Because
in
it
the county, you know, at that time?
It probably wasn't
It
built to
wasn't.
the
Could-
standard.
And it could be that private people who live there just
Mhm.
paved
Yeah,
their own road
paved their
and had no involvement whatsoever with the county.
Yeah, we don't have
And
to
if it's
approve
not a
it.
public roadway,
That-
we
that's what
wouldn't have,
happened in
we
New
wouldn't have
Rancho
cared if they
and
want
Walnut.
private, if you want to pave your own private roadway or easement.
Well,
We wouldn't
it's
have-
very easy to find out if they went through the property tax, if the county had something to do with it.
No?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I don't
No, not
recall,
necessarily.
We just collect the money.
I don't recall
We don't run
a
the
roadway
improvement
improvement district in the
In
Orange
that
Grove
area?
No,
but-
there
I
is.
love
it-
the fact that you stay on that.
It was paved a while ago, and two roads were not paved because all those residents that live in those two streets didn't
Didn't
want to
want
pay. They didn't want to be part of it. But that's why, you know, because
Yeah.
you look at that road, you look at those roads, and they're very wide. They got the strip of the cement on the sides that, you know, they don't let the asphalt move.
The curve is
sideways,
called, the curve.
Yeah. So there are a lot better roads built than a lot of the primitive roads that I see here throughout the city, throughout the county, within the city limits. And so, you know, it gets me that why wasn't those roads
Accepted to the county. They were never
County,
offered
yeah.
to the county. As a matter of fact, some of those roads were sold at public auction. I tried to get the county to buy them at one particular time, and the county wouldn't buy them. They were lost. They were actually out to bid. It's a very
Well-
long and lengthy history that we've got to deal with. And we will deal with it. We will research, or you will then, research if there is an improvement district in that area, when it was formed, if it was formed, and what it covered. And that's the answer that, you know, Supervisor Porches would like to get. Although, as he says, it's in my district, but, you know, it's in real close to Somerton, so it's in his heart. It's in
I
my
mean,
district, within his
goes
heart.
just right by
Yeah,
my-
but
next to it.
I experienced that for the last 20 years, so, yeah. But anyway, let's go back to this, okay? And which is, we're setting up a process where public right-of-ways and county right-of-ways, but public right-of-ways in this particular case, can go through a process to actually achieve the ability to receive maintenance from the county. Yeah, courtesy maintenance, as we call it. And this is a process that we hope will give people that have roadways, public right-of-ways that were back before 1990, because we can't do it anytime after that. Is that correct? Again, this is the process, and we will deal with some of these islands and some of these areas by finding out what the situation that, you know, pertains to them is, okay? Right? Any other thing? And remember, the only thing we actually discussed that changed that a little bit is to allow you to have flexibility to go beyond that 20% requirement, okay?
I need extenuating circumstances or.
You need emergency powers to do this. Yeah, you need to make sure that at the end of the day, the benefit is not so obvious to a single individual that it makes that process tainted. You know, that is pretty much what you need to take a look at, right?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I commend you for bringing this forward. I mean, as long as we've been on the board, it's just no. And that's
No, we've
the end of the
always said
story.
no.
But
To this
forward
point now,
thinking
we're
like
saying
this
yes.
and bring us something that we could actually work with.
This
Thank you.
former
Thank
board.
you. And
Thank you, Josh.
this is the way things should work. I appreciate it.
It's all because Supervisor Porches and Supervisor Pancrase and Supervisor Simmons are here now. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen.
You wouldn't be standing.
Okay,
by.
we are in the way of protecting the taxpayers' money.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
by not doing anything that isn't prescribed by law, right? The attorneys are saying yes. Okay.
Thank you, Josh.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the process to go to.
Does this need a motion?
No, my intent was to come back
Or
with
get
a formal
directions?
document.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so if you have
Fine.
any follow-up
The
comments. or
motion is to instruct
suggestions,
staff to come up with a document that we can vote on, okay? It's just direction. Fine, thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Make sure that the next time you come, you have an explanation on the Orange Grove area then, okay? All right, bathroom break. I've been requested to take a bathroom, well, there's a request to take a bathroom break. So 5-minute break. I'm sorry, ladies, but a lady requested a 5-minute break. All right, let's continue. We're going to move item number 4 and leave it till the end as reward for your patience. And we're going to a rezoning, regular public hearing items. The staff will make a full presentation on each of the following items, followed by a separate discussion, public hearing, and action by the Board of Supervisors. There's development, planning, and zoning, rezoning case number 18-11, Audrey Monk, agent for the AANH family, Arizona LTD Park, requested rezoning of a parcel of approximately 10 acres, gross acres in size, each from suburban site built 5-acre minimum to suburban site built 2-acre minimum on assessors parcels number 748-11-003, located in the vicinity of the northeast corner of County 14.5 Street and Avenue 4.5E, Yuma, Arizona. Just to, as an information item, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation by the planning staff, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. Then I'll open it to a public hearing where I'll receive public comments. I do have a couple of cards here, and we'll follow that process along. Okay, so the first thing is for our staff to give us a summary or a presentation on it.
Thank you, Chairman Reyes, members of the board, Juan Leal Rubio, Senior Planner with the Planning and Zoning Division. This is a request to rezone approximately 10 acres from SSB 5 to suburban site built 2-acre minimum. This is in the Yuma Mesa planning area in the vicinity of the northeast corner of County 14.5 Street and Avenue 4.5E in Yuma. And the intent is to create 4 parcels of 2.5 acres in size for single family residences. This is a vicinity map that shows parcel 3, crosshatch on the center. Within 300 feet to the north, we have parcels 748, 11, 001, and 002, currently in alfalfa and zoned R85. To the west, we have parcel 748, 10, 002, currently zoned SSB2 in agricultural production. And to the south, we have parcels also zone SSB2. Parcels 4 and 6 are in alfalfa production, and parcels 15, 16, and 17 to the southeast are currently having single-family residence each. Immediately to the east, we have parcels 1 and 2, 748, 12001, and 002, zone R810, and also contain a single-family residence. This is a proposal of the intent. Exhibit A, parcels A through D, showing the layout with the easements and everything else. This is the proposal, and this is going to be a part of the condition that they dedicate 25 feet on the east side, on the west side, I'm sorry, and that this is an irrigation easement that runs, an irrigation ditch that runs through the middle of the parcel. And we're also proposing a 20-foot easement on the south side, and that easement to be a standard C gravel road. Oops. This is a aerial photography of the property in red, subject property. This is a little bit more zoomed out that shows the major county roads. Avenue 5E to the east, County 15th to the south, and County 14th Street to the north. This is a picture that shows the egress point from County 14th Street along Avenue 4.5E. This is just a road. There's no ingress point to County 14th Street at this point. And this shows the access point from Avenue 5E and County 14.5 Street. What you see here is a paved easement. It's a private easement. The subject property is labeled with the agent's name.
So would they access the property from 5E along County 14.5? Is that drivable?
Chairman Reyes, this is drivable, yes. It is a means of access. There's several other ways of accessing the property. However, this is a private easement, so the owner would have to inquire to see if they're able to use it as a their main means of access.
Right, it would require permission, right?
They would have to do an inquiry to see if they're allowed to use that as, for their use.
The paved part?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And the irrigation district made a comment that people are using the canal bank
Yes, they are,
roads
yeah.
to get to their properties out there, right?
That is a concern that was expressed by the irrigation district, yes.
They'll have to close off the road. Possibly.
Well, we'll see this. I don't think that's what the easement's for, I think.
This is the Hooper residence. This is facing south. The subject property is down here somewhere.
Mhm.
Avenue 4 and 3/4 E, by the way, it is a private easement. County 14.5 Street is public right of way. This is Avenue 4.5 E and County 14.5 Street. The Hooper residence is on this side. The subject property is on the north. This is a view looking north at the subject property. And looking south from the subject property, this is the Hooper residence. And this is looking west from the subject property. This is the proposed easement, and we're recommending a standard sea gravel road. This is looking north at the concrete ditch on the subject property. We received correspondence from MCA's Yuma, the Yuma County Airport Authority, and the Yuma Mesa Irrigation District. And we took those comments into consideration for the formulation of the analysis and conditions of this case. And staff is recommending approval of this case.
Why did you take the comment from the airport authority? Is it near the flyaway path or something?
Chairman Reyes, that is a standard practice. We always ask for comments from the Yuma County Airport Authority. They provided comments as far as disclosure statements that need to be recorded because of proximity to the bombing range.
Okay, so that's the reason why.
Correct. We are recommending approval with the following performance conditions: that within 60 days of approval by the board, they submit a ARS 121134 waiver, and the following disclosure statements that need to be recorded: the agricultural disclosure statement, range, and infrastructure disclosure statement. And the following schedule for development: that within 1 year of approval by the board, that they dedicate 25 feet of right-of-way on the west side of the property as indicated on the maps. And number two, prior to approval of the land division permit, the 1 year, and then prior to approval of the land division permit, a granting permit shall be obtained from the Department of Development Service to improve the egress easement referred to below with the gravel roadway, the standard C that I mentioned. The eastern edge of the egress easement shall also contain the means for emergency vehicles to turn around, which already exist. Number three, property shall be split in accordance with the attached site plan labeled Exhibit A by means of a land division permit in accordance with Yuma County zoning ordinance. Number four, as part of number three above, the owner shall record an egress easement 20 feet in width along the south property line as mentioned. Number five, the owner shall submit certification from a licensed engineer confirming the gravel roadway was constructed in accordance with standard C gravel roadway. Number six, that each new parcel shall contain access to irrigation water with certification from a licensed engineer confirming there is an adequate irrigation system in place for each lot. The improvements to the irrigation system shall be built by the owner and certified by the licensed engineer. And number seven, an easement providing irrigation to all created lots shall be provided. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna open it. I'm gonna open it now to the board. Yes, Lynn?
Mr. Chair and Juan, what that means is there's going to be turnouts on there so that they can flood irrigate, correct? From that ditch that runs along the backside.
Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Pancrazzi, what this means is that they actually have to build an irrigation system.
Oh, there isn't one on there now.
There's an irrigation system that crosses the property. So the intent is that for each parcel to have actual irrigation water, an irrigation system is built along, whatever point an engineer
to put a gate in.
They have to put gates in each one, or there's a gate?
Well, okay, if we continue with this discussion, do you have something to say, Mr. McLeod?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
so that, to her point, I'm looking at the photo of the irrigation canal. And I'm also looking at the arrow showing which direction we're pointing. So it looks to me like this splits the property like almost in half or in a third and does not run parallel
Correct.
to
Oh,
the,
it doesn't.
it does not run parallel to the project, right?
Thank you.
That's correct.
Yeah,
To
that's what I
clarify,
thought.
Chairman Reyes, the irrigation system, the irrigation ditch currently in place runs north and south
Oh,
from this
got it.
point up.
Right.
Through
And the
property.
intent is
Okay.
that they
It runs sideways.
expand or improve the irrigation distance to provide access to these new lots
Yes,
and these new lots.
okay. Got it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought I had that.
All right, okay.
Thank you,
Thank
that's
you.
what I needed. That's what I needed.
Okay, when I look at the letters here, how is the assessor's office involved in the process?
It is a standard practice that we ask for. We have a list of requests for comments from many public agencies that we send out on every case.
Okay. Does he answer every time? I see his answer here, but I don't remember seeing him answer every one.
He provides good comments, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, it's not that I have a problem with more people knowing about it. Maybe I'm just surprised at all the levels of responses and all the level of people that you send it to. Wow. Okay,
Thank you.
fine. Any other questions from members of the board to staff? I'm going to open the public hearing on this item, and I have two forms to address the board. One is from Audrey Monk, 10758 East 39th Street, Yuma, Arizona. Would you like to? And reminder, you are winning right now. The staff recommends approval, so be careful.
This is a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
My name is Audrey Monk. I am the agent for this process for Andy and Nancy Hooper. I'm in the process. Can you give me the previous, the one right after that? That shows the actual division.
And remember, you're in TV, so when you look away, you may not, the camera may not, yeah.
I'll try not to look away.
No, just.
I am in the process currently of purchasing APN 748-11-006, which is this
Parcel below.
Right.
below,
Yeah.
as well as A, B, C, and D.
Mhm.
A, B, C, and D will be for my children. They're each going to have 2.5 acres. I will be residing on this property down here, which I'm going to put a open arena, a barn, my home, and alfalfa. On the end properties behind, if you look at this, we're facing south, just north of parcel A, B, C, and D, we're going to have alfalfa. And alfalfa down here at the bottom. What I would like to do, and would appreciate your approval, is to have, because there's an irrigation district that runs right smack up the center of these properties, and we want to flood irrigate. From the irrigation ditch, irrigate the backside of parcel B, the backside of parcel A, and irrigate naturally C and D on the backside.
Up at the top of the picture, correct?
Yeah,
And you
that's
have-
okay, it's
Yes,
okay.
yes, at the top.
Yeah.
It'll be
Okay.
on the north side.
Yeah, on
of
the north
property.
side.
So the homes will be on the south side.
Mm-hmm.
The alfalfa will be on the north. And then also irrigate the backside of this other property to feed our livestock. I went and did a little bit of research to see what it would cost to bury a pipe to extend, and I would have to put in 2 gates, one on the side B and one on the side C, and run pipe to those end properties which we'll never use because we're going to be flood irrigating, it's going to be $17,000 to put the gates in and to put the pipes to feed those in properties.
A and D?
It'll go underneath parcel B and parcel C
Okay.
to irrigate
A and D.
A and D.
Got it.
We won't be using it.
Why? How do you get water to it if you're gonna flood irrigate?
Flood irrigates right
Oh.
straight through
So it's
as they're
not gonna
being irrigated
separate,
right
but
now.
they're separate parcels.
We'll just be putting up a border
Oh,
to divide, each of these. The homes will be on this side, just like you would any other irrigable piece of land. And irrigate this way, irrigate this way. What I am proposing is to provide an easement, or what I would like to do is provide an easement in the event that in 40 years my family decides that they want to sell these parcels, to enable the people, if they ever sell on parcel A or parcel D, so they will have access to irrigation. Burying a pipe right now is just not sensible because it's going to fill up with dirt. And then I've thrown away $17,000 on something that I will never use.
Where would the easement be?
The easement would be
On the north side?
back side of parcel B and the back side of parcel C. Right along the
red
back end
line
of the property. So when they need to irrigate, they'll be able to just open a gate and run it through the back side of the property. I think it's just a simple solution. Save me a ton of money.
Just a little background, and we've had these issues come up before, and the irrigation district always complains that people say that they're not going to use it, but then when it happens that they can't do it, they'll complain to the irrigation district. The irrigation district has, if you provide them with a way to deliver the water, they have to deliver you water. If you don't provide them with a way to deliver the water, that lets them off the hook. And normally what we end up doing, what ended up happening in the past is that we didn't make that clear to people, and people didn't make the right, and then they complain, well, we didn't know, we had to, put in a canal or something, and normally we're talking about above the ground, which is supposed to be, I thought it was cheaper, I don't know, maybe it isn't. It isn't? Oh, okay. But I mean, we do this to protect the future, homeowners. I mean, hopefully you would understand that when you say, and I use this analogy because what costs $17,000 today may cost $30,000 in 40 years from now.
Absolutely.
And normally nothing that I know of, really, almost nothing that I know of goes down in price, and especially improvements. And so we're just trying to sort of get ahead of that and not, now not allow us to put the future board of supervisors in a situation where they'll be asked, why did you do this? Now, nobody wants to, pay the cost of doing this. Yeah, I guess we have to wait that. We have to wait the obligation that we have.
And I understand and appreciate that, but it isn't so much if the $17,000 would be wisely spent and it would be utilized, that is fabulous. But an easement can provide the same thing, because the border could be put up, or a ditch for that matter. I just hate to throw $17,000 into a ditch and put new gates in, and then have those gates or those pipes that would feed those in properties never used. They're going to fill up with dirt within 5 years. And then...
All right, well, okay.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, what would prevent you from using them? If you're going to flood irrigate anyway, why not just use them so that doesn't happen?
Well, why would I need to use them if we're going to be irrigating parcel B and parcel A at the same time? We're just going to open the gate, run the water as it is done right now.
'Cause you
That's
split
how
it
it's
apart.
irrigated right now at this moment.
So
It just
C and
has a
D are irrigated
border.
off of one gate
Yeah.
on one side. And
Yeah, and then the other side is irrigated the same way.
How much, Tony,
Mhm.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, why wouldn't you take that middle one and then put a ditch on both and then gates that come out to each one, and then they could be irrigated
Separate.
separately and,
And there's a lot of
The
of
cost, it's the
ways
cost.
to.
You simply say the cost.
There's a lot of ways, yes, there's a lot of
know.
ways to do that, but the cost of putting in another ditch, a full ditch, to irrigate these two properties when a border can be put up and irrigated as it's being irrigated currently.
when you say border, what do you mean by that?
A
A
berm.
berm,
A
a berm to manage it.
Just a basic
Keep the
berm
water- keep
that's
the
being
water.
utilized right now to irrigate the whole, all the parcels. They just open two gates
Right.
on this side and then two gates on the other side to irrigate this.
I guess the answer to that question is that we don't know what's going to happen 4 or 5 years from now. We don't know if the family is gonna want to sell the parcels in the end. We don't know if you're going to be managing them. And we sort of get into a situation where, you know, we always get to a point where, you know, we deal with the worst case scenario, which we just did last
Yes,
meeting,
we did.
where we say, look, you know, all good intentions, you know, I mean, everybody has them. And I suppose cost is one of the factors. To us, is just making sure that whomever in the future, you know, we're splitting the parcels. That's the reason why you have to do these things. We're splitting the parcels, and we're
I
splitting the
understand.
parcels in a way that you can actually sell one, or the other one, or the two in the middle to someone that isn't in your family, and that person behind that is going to say, why,
Did
you know,
allow
did you
this?
not? Why did you allow it? It's like it's the same thing as right of ways, right?
Yes.
You're giving us an easement. You're giving that property an easement, even though you may not need the easement because, you know, they can come out the same way. They're part of the family. But if you ever want to sell it and the person in parcel A, you know, someone wants to buy parcel A and they have no way other than going through to parcel B to get their water, they're gonna come back and say, yeah,
Well, that's
well,
what the easement's for,
That's
right?
what the easement would be for.
no, the easement is not to irrigate. The easement is to create the irrigation system.
So the
Right.
people on
It's
A
not.
and
So-
D would
they
have
can-
to create
They would
it.
have to buy, that would be
They have to
part of the
buy it, yeah.
purchase price, basically.
Sorry, Supervisor
have to
Porches?
consider
The
that.
easement would be provided to parcel A and to parcel D.
Mhm.
But just this is going to be a family estate. We're planning on starting building in January. The whole purpose of
Right.
this is
Okay.
for my family to build on this property and have a rope and arena and have a barn for our 4-H and FFA projects for our children and their children down the line. This isn't a temporary purchase. This is going to be a very large, expensive project.
Okay,
And,
Mr. Chair,
sure.
I just want to make a comment. But if we make an exception and allowed an exception for those 4 parcels, the next person who comes up to here, like it was last week when we were in the 65 decimal zone, and they expect the same
allowance.
Waiver.
yeah,
allowance.
waiver, there you go. They expect the same waiver. So if you're going to make this into a huge family property, having those ditches, to me, would be ideal for everybody, so that everybody would be able to, each of the family members would be able to irrigate at their own time and not have to rely on
Next door.
B and C to be able to irrigate A and D.
Okay.
And we wouldn't be making an exception that people would end up having to make, we'd have to consider an exception, an exception, and an exception all the way down the line. You know,
All right,
for
okay.
everybody else, because that whole area out there is being subdivided. It's being subdivided into 2-acre parcels. And if yours isn't required to have turnouts on all 4, the next person who comes that wants to subdivide is going to expect his not to have turnouts as well. So.
Oh, you gotta make, you gotta weigh those factors.
As the chairman's fond of saying, there is no such thing in zoning. We don't accept the premise that there is a precedent set. Each one is single and distinct.
All right.
You know, for my, Mr. Chairman, for my piece, I think the applicant has provided an option that makes sense. If there's going to be an easement across B and C and it's going to be transferred to A and D, that easement is available to them, any future property purchaser of either A or D, if I was purchasing that property and I wanted flood irrigation, I would simply consider the cost of putting the pipe in my purchase cost. So it's going to add, you know, at that time, let's say 10 years from now, it's going to cost me $14,000 in addition to the purchase price of the parcel and the home, which my guess is won't be a very substantial percent of the total value of the piece, right? And they will have access to flood irrigation. Instead of asking somebody to throw away $17,000 needlessly because we're trying to just fit, squeeze it to fit a policy that we have.
Right, let me, hold on.
question.
Let me have Supervisor Portia say something because you guys tend to dominate the conversation.
Sorry.
And he wants to say something, but I have no
We're gonna
chance.
fix that in the new
Okay,
boardroom.
all right. Go ahead.
My question is those the end properties are gonna be in the family, you said, or?
Yes, all four
All
of those
four of them?
parcels,
Okay.
they've been divided or proposedly divided. So each one of my children will have 2.5 acres. And we're going to be putting a road over the ditch and a road along the front of that property. And another thing that I would like to do, and it's really going to be an upgrade, but instead of using just regular gravel seed, I'd like to do AB. Number one, it's going to compress and harden the ground a lot more along that area, and it'll keep down dirt. And so when we water, it'll, you know, compress down just like AB would anywhere else. With gravel and having a construction crew in there, because they're going to build 5 homes at the same time, which is going to be a lot of activity going on in that area in a very short time.
Where's the 5th home? Up above?
I'm going to be building down here in the 6 acres down here
Got
at the
it.
bottom.
Okay.
So, and then I'll
The 4 up there. Okay.
The 4 children on the
All right.
bottom. And then
Supervisor Porches, can you continue?
My question is to staff. Could it be a condition that if they're going to be in the family and if they're going to be changed ownership down the road,
Can it
if
be a
that owner
condition?
of the property right now pay for that irrigation pipe, if they want to sell it before they're, could that be a condition or recorded or?
A condition of sale?
Yeah.
I don't
That's
think
a little
so.
more complicated now.
Chairman Reyes,
That's what-
I really don't know how we would be able to
You can't force-
enforce them.
Maggie has an answer to that. She's right behind you, Mrs. Monk. Maggie is a DDA director, and she wants to address the question. No, hold on. Just stay there in case. Maggie?
Mr. Chairman, Maggie Castro, Planning and Zoning Director. Conditions that you place on a zoning action cannot be owner-specific. They have to be property-specific. To address the comment that the applicant made concerning an easement for irrigation purposes, that issue was discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting, and the commission did add an item number 7 under the schedule for development to address her request.
They put in an easement?
Can you put that up on the screen?
Item number 7 on the schedule for
I
development.
saw it when I was.
I know, I want to see it
studying
again. I did too, but.
That's already there.
Correct.
They added that.
Yeah.
They added it.
Well, they added that. The issue is whether. Okay,
But an easement, it's not an irrigation method. To take, you still didn't need a ditch.
Well,
Or a pipe.
Or a pipe.
can I respond?
Sure, the discussion is.
That's just an easement.
Just
that
let him
if
finish.
You put water on an easement, it's gonna go,
Anywhere.
you either gotta define it as a ditch or as a pipe.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Sure.
can address that, what I was trying to get at, Supervisor, is that when, let's assume that down the road, because nothing's forever, right? We love your family, you love your family, but 30 or 40 years from now. But my point was, if I was purchasing either A or D from the applicant's family member down the road, then I would consider the cost of installing the pipe along the easement as part of my purchase price. Okay, so in other words, let's just use a ridiculous figure. They're selling the property for $200,000, right? And so I'm looking at this, and I know that it doesn't have irrigation access that I can control. So I go to the contractor. It's going to cost me $15,000 to install a pipe. The easement exists. So my actual purchase price for that property to do what I want is now $215,000. And so the 15,000, if you use real numbers, is going to be a very small percentage.
Yeah, well, that,
So you have the ability to irrigate.
okay,
No, but let me just-
okay,
hold on. I mean, you're bringing up something that, why are we asking her to provide irrigation then to all those, to those parcels?
That's our policy.
it is a,
But you just changed it, so not providing, it is gonna be the owner, whoever buys that property down the road to pay for it.
Correct.
Whoa, what, you're contradicting that policy.
Right. If we don't, right.
I just
We have
don't-
that ability to not follow our own policy.
Well, then we have an ability to say, okay, just don't do the ditch and leave it like that.
Well, that's what they're requesting.
It's just.
And they're requesting that because our policy is that when we split properties like this, that each property have access to irrigation.
Well, when we're gonna be looking at policies, I just wanna be on the same page every time we have an item presented to us, that we have the ability to change the policy without,
there's a reason for that policy, you know that, right?
Yeah, there
The
is.
county,
And
the County
I
Water
pushed
Use
for that
Association,
policy.
the
When I
county
first got on
homework,
the board,
the
that was
county
my deal.
water use, it was a lot of complaints. People were complaining to us
That they
that
didn't
we
have
were
access.
allowing, this lot splits without providing a way to deliver that water to those particular ones. The fact that
A
this
lot
is,
in my district.
the fact that this is a family situation, it's fine. I can understand that. But we don't do things based upon necessarily what's in front of us right now. We do things because in the future, things change. And, the fact is when we don't require these things in a minute, when we don't require these things up front, they end up becoming a complaint from someone. Either the person that buys it and now says, why do I have to do this? Or the individual that all of a sudden, let's just say for the sake of taking the opposite viewpoint, that the family members don't get along. Let's say that the property owner on A doesn't get along with the property owner on B, and B has the only way to get water to property A.
Right.
Okay, think that way too, and that's why this, rules were made. You provide access to each one of those parcels. That way, there is no question. Everybody has a way to get water delivered to their parcel. What you're asking us to do is to change that policy to now allow only an easement to be the driving situation. But, it's going to get into a situation where somebody else is going to come and say, well, you gave that family an easement. This is a family purchase. I want an easement too. Second, you're going to get into a situation where in the future, if somebody doesn't get that water delivered, they're going to complain to the Water Use Association, who's complained to us. Don't do that. Provide water to each parcel that you split. And that's what we're facing with right
Mr. Chairman,
now. Supervisor Pancras.
Maggie, you can't make it a condition of sale on parcels.
You can. It's
A
a
and
zoning
D?
matter.
You can't.
Mr. Chairman,
we wouldn't have that
item number
authority.
6 on the schedule for development does require that all lots resulting from the proposed division be provided with a means of irrigation and access to irrigation water.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So that condition is still there.
Okay.
The Planning Commission did not remove that item on the schedule for development. So that would require means that the developer or the owner provide a means and access to irrigation water to all 4 lots.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant also had a request on item 2 of the schedule for development to provide an AB road. Staff is requesting gravel standard C, which is a gravel roadway. If the applicant wishes to construct a higher standard, that would be also allowed or acceptable.
Yeah, I was going to get there.
All right, sure, one more thing, but I mean, we're just down to that issue. And I
All
think
right.
at the bottom line is going to be a decision. You know, we've heard plenty.
But the only concern about this pipe, I can put the pipe in. I can put the gates in, I can spend the 17K. But in 30 years, those pipes are gonna be worthless to the people on both ends of the property because they're gonna be filled with dirt.
I get that, Ms. Monk,
Okay.
but if I knew what was gonna happen 30 years from now,
Well,
I'd
that's
be
something that I
sensitive.
can guarantee you will happen. Those pipes will be
Right.
full.
Wow, okay.
Thank you very much
All
for
right.
your time. I appreciate it.
I just
Mr.
want to say
Chairman.
that I understand the cost of providing a ditch or a pipe, and I want to just, make it as, as
Affordable.
least affordable, or at least, costly to you. I just wanted to see if there was a way in the future that if someone wants to sell, that irrigation is still
And
there,
I
and it can be
appreciate
provided.
that. And I was hoping that easement would
settle.
provide that because,
I get it.
we're just gonna be flood irrigating.
Okay.
On both sides. Thank you
Right.
very much for
Yeah,
your
you're
time.
welcome.
I appreciate it.
Well, I have another question.
Oh, yeah, he has another question. Mr. Supervisor McLeod
Could
is
you bring back
breaking
up the
all.
aerial view of the subject and the surrounding properties? I just want to make sure I have it clear in my mind here. Which, as we know from the last meeting, can be sometimes kind of thick.
Sometimes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, only sometimes. So, Ms. Monk, you see the subject property there, and you were talking about the one below it, on the right side below, right there.
Mhm.
You're purchasing that property?
I'm purchasing.
And there's a home on there now, right?
Down below.
Right there.
Right there is where Hoopers live. Pretty much that line that faces the ditch. If you go straight on over from
And
that house, if you go west to the ditch is where Hoopers currently live. I'm purchasing the 6 acres
Above it.
right above it.
Oh, above it, so you're not purchasing that home?
No, no,
Now I get it. I thought you were purchasing that whole large
The whole
piece.
quarter.
no, just the
Just the
6
top,
acres.
6 acres on top, it's a corner.
Yep, gotcha. Now I get it.
All right.
I want to make
Thank
sure
you,
I
Ms.
fully
Monk.
understood.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else on the public that wants to address the board on this particular issue? No? Okay, I'm closing the public hearing and bringing it back to the board. Oh, somebody else? Oh, somebody had a card, sorry.
Couple of cards.
Margie
Margie Delabetta.
De La Vera. Sorry, Margie. Sorry, Margie, I got caught up on the discussion.
You have to get behind there so they can see you.
I am here, Margie Delabetta. I reside Yuma, Arizona. I'm here for clarification purposes. Audrey Monk, in your terminology, the county's terminology for application is actually the buyer of the property, but we placed her as the agent in behalf of the partnership, and who is made up of Andy and Nancy Hooper are in the audience. I technically am the real estate broker representing the sellers. I am here for resource only. To clarify what Commissioner McLeod just questioned, earlier in 2018, we took the 10-acre parcel that the Hooper residence sits on and did a parcel split, and that's where the 6 acres became. Shortly after that parcel split, Audrey Monk came into the picture and desired to buy that and the top 10 that the Hoopers also own. So I'm here again for resource on any question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions before she leaves? No? All right. Anybody else in the public?
Got a second one, I think, right?
No, that was it. There was 2 of them. So I got 2 of them. Anybody else? You don't need to have a card. I mean, you could just come up and, come up. Nobody? All right, then I'll close the public hearing and take it back to the board for a motion.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think the board probably knows my position. I think the applicant has provided a common sense way to avoid an unnecessary expense. And I just don't like to see us causing an expense that's not going to bring benefit. Normally, when there's an expense, there's some sort of benefit. So I am in favor of allowing the easement. We'll see what the motion is.
You need to make the motion before, we can discuss it, but.
Okay, well, I will make that motion, but.
The motion
we
would be to
the
approve rezoning case
recommendations?
number 1811 with the planning and zoning recommendation, with
Right.
the exception of the requirement that requires a fully engineered irrigation district, irrigation district approved irrigation system.
And I have
to
a
be-
question for staff then. Would my motion be to remove item 6
And to apply item
and
7?
to apply item
Chairman
7?
Reyes, that is correct.
Okay, that would be my motion then, that we remove number 6 and insert number 7 in its place, which would become number 6.
Now, let me ask a question from staff. Why are those two placed there? For us to pick one, or they were actually being required twice?
Chairman
excuse me,
Reyes,
separate requirement.
yeah, the reason this was put on here, number 7 was put on here by the Planning and Zoning Commission, is because the same discussions that are being
Taking
brought
place
to you
now,
today
taking
was
place now.
brought to the commission level. The commission felt that adding an extra 7 would satisfy the client's request, but yet again, not eliminate the need for an irrigation system to be put in place.
Oh, okay, so let me see if I get this right. Staff recommended number 6, period. So the commission recommended number 7 as a way of allowing for another option?
Actually, number 6 should be covered number 7 should be covered under number 6. When the land division permit comes in, we'll ensure that there's an easement in place for the irrigation system to be built. So this was, again, to satisfy the customer's request, but yet again, leave number 6 in place so that the irrigation system is built.
All right, so the easement is going to be needed anyway to provide that
Correct.
ditch or pipe in this particular case, right? So you do need number 7 to be there anyway. You
Correct.
just don't, well, the question here is whether number 6 is going to be required,
Correct.
right? The question in front of us. And Supervisor McLeod is saying replace number 6 with number 7, basically. Is that it? Is that your
That's
motion?
correct. Yes, sir.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
Another question.
Sure, another question.
That easement is gonna belong to the county or is it private?
Private.
It would be a private easement.
Private easement, belongs to the
Private
property.
easement. Oh. And then we don't have any authority
No,
to check.
after that.
After that, we don't have any authority to make sure that the other, even if he pays, like Supervisor McLeod said, they can purchase or put it into the loan to build the pipe.
We have nothing.
If the lot C says, no, this easement is mine.
No, they can't do that. That's what an easement is.
Well, who?
Chairman Reyes, Supervisor Porchas, whatever you decide, if you decide to eliminate number 6 and just keep number 7, we'll ensure that on the land division plat, before it gets recorded, that this easement is in place. Again, if you decide to keep number 6, we'll also ensure that easement is in place for when they build the irrigation system, that, there's a place for the irrigation system to be built.
Yeah, but to answer his question is, could property B refuse property A the ability to build a pipeline 20 years from now?
That's a legal question. I don't
No,
know.
no.
Well, yes, there is, they couldn't. That's what an easement is, right?
No, I think his answer was more who's gonna pay.
No, I
No.
mean.
No, his
I
question
know
was
who's
exactly-
gonna- Obviously, who.
But
if that easement, who has, the
Authority over it.
authority over that easement?
We don't.
I mean,
The easements, Mr. Chairman, the easements run with the land that benefits
Yeah,
from
that's
it.
right.
Those are the ones who can decide to take it away or get rid of it. And quite frankly, I think 6 works with what's being requested by the applicant. It's just an irrigation system. If it's certified that flood irrigation works for both of them, then it should be sufficient at this time. If they split or sell property down the line, property A or whichever one it is benefited by having that easement in place, should they no longer want to flood irrigate and they want to do their own irrigation. I think 6 and 7 work together with the applicant's asking.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
I think that the discussion here is because Mrs. Monk thinks that item number 6 requires for her to provide a working irrigation system that has either a pipe system, because it's engineered, either a pipe system or a ditch system. And what you're telling us is that even with 6 and 7, she's not. She's only required to certify that water can get to parcels A and D. That's it. And she can do this through flood irrigation or through a pipe or through a canal, as long as she gets, a certification. And what legal staff is telling us is that having that easement in there, it basically prevents the parcels B, for example, to cut off water to parcel A. Correct? I mean, legal, that's correct, right? Because there's an easement that parcel A can use in case there's a conflict where, they can get some sort of system to irrigate parcel A.
The easement would allow parcel A down the
Access to
line,
what?
should they choose to do something different, to have that there. But I don't necessarily see that as being required to be built today, as long as they can get some type of irrigation water system that's certified by a licensed engineer confirming that it's adequate for both lots. And if flood irrigation is able to do that with flood irrigation, then I think it's sufficient.
Should have said that a half hour ago.
We're the same lines back and forth. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll change my motion then to rezoning case number 18-11 to accept the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission as presented.
See, I did not know that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have spent so much
I was
time.
trying to help you.
Yeah. All right. All right. So the motion is to go ahead and approve the item as presented with the seven scheduled for development items as presented by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Any more discussion on this, guys? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by state aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Oh, there was no second? Who made this?
I'll second.
He seconded.
And that's my MO today.
Yeah, the
He
second.
finally did.
Okay, now, let me back up a little bit. There was a motion by Supervisor McLeod, and a second by Supervisor Porches to approve rezoning case number 1811 as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission with all 7 scheduled for development requirements. Correct? All right. All those in favor of that motion signify, oh, wait a minute. All those in favor of that motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Is that covered? Thank you. All right. We have one
when your
presentation,
kids don't
and
get
I'm going
along,
to give
you can
you
put in a
10 minutes.
So that
10
A and
minutes
D can get
for
irrigated.
item number 4. No? Oh,
No, let's do
really,
it.
no. How long is it going to take you?
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Then let's go. 7 minutes for the
All right.
item number 4, Development Service
Yeah.
Engineering Division Flood Control, discussion
I
and
think it's
possible
a
action on the
wonderful
status
idea.
of fiscal year. Okay, I'm gonna let everybody settle a little bit then, because I'm just saying too many things, too many people are talking. Okay, item number 7,
Right, Chairman. board
Development
members.
Services Engineering Division Flood Control. This discussion on possible action on the status of fiscal year 2018-2019 capital improvement projects in the engineering and flood control district program. Provide feedback and guidance and authorize the county engineer to initiate budget amendments and other corrective actions as necessary. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Sami Ayub, CIP manager with the engineering division. Here to give you a quick status update of the key projects we're working on under HERF and flood control.
Okay.
So from the 36 projects we have, I chose the top 10. Quickly, the purpose of this presentation to bring you up to date on the scope, schedule, and budget for each project quickly. Critical issues, timelines, and budget issues. This is a quick look at our CIP management process. It's a 7-step process. We take the request, we evaluate the request, we program them, develop the projects, and then we build it. And that takes years for that to happen.
Yeah.
Speed of government.
CIP budget allocation, we're looking at 48% HERF and roughly about 28% flood control, and then the remaining 24% is non-HERF, not flood control projects. This shows what we have allocated in this fiscal year for the 2 programs and what we have spent in the first quarter of this year.
Sammy, where are we? I know that a big chunk of that is Smucker Basin. Where are we with that? Is that out to bid yet?
Are you gonna get to it?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to it, but I can answer it
Sorry,
quickly.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's gotta be one of the top 10.
It is.
Okay, So if you wait, then you're gonna get there.
This is kind of shows what project we have in what stage. For the HERF projects, we have 24 projects, 6 in the planning, and I have 11 in the design and development, and 7 in the construction. Flood control, we have a total of 11 projects, 3 in the planning, 6 in the design development, and 2 in the construction. Target bid dates, there's a list of bid dates. We have the first quarter, we have South Frontage Road, County 14th, and we have the chip seal. Second quarter, we have Avenue D, County 8th Street. And then in third quarter, we have the chip seal again for the spring. We have traffic signals, we have Somerton County 14th, and Smucker Park Detention Basin. Thus, the intended bid time would be the first quarter of next year. Currently is under review by the Arizona Department of Water Resources.
So our 20-year project may finally go.
Yes, it's happening.
Where's Gadsden?
Sorry?
Where's Gadsden as a project? Gadsden.
Gadsden, San Luis?
No. There's a project in Gadsden I've been trying to get going on there. I don't know, I haven't seen it. No, it's okay, keep going.
And we have a lot of projects in the fourth quarter to go out to bid too. HERF projects ranked by their budgeted dollar. Those are the top 8 projects. County 8th Street. And we have County 12th Street, and this is the list just to show you how they rank and by the purpose. I have broken them into mobility, capacity, quality, and safety type of projects. So that's what the MCQS stands for. The top one, the County 8th Street, pretty much account for 20% of the
C and D, yeah, between C and D. That's where that narrows, doesn't it?
Right.
Okay.
First project, that's County 8th Street. This is just kind of a vicinity map to show you where the project is. It's from Avenue C to Avenue D.
There's a new subdivision going in down there too, isn't there? Excuse me.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right there. You're getting like secondary comments over here.
Sorry.
Well, it isn't this supervisor, it's not supervisor. Try to manage it up.
Everything is in line. We have 100%, almost 100% plans. We just need to get the city to finally approve the plan so we can go out to bid. So our target to
Can you repeat that so the newspaper can get it? So
Can you stop interrupting? You let it get finished.
Can you slow down a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
Can you provide me with paper copy of that presentation so, you know?
Mr. Chairman must be hungry.
No.
So everything is good, but planning on bidding this project pretty soon, as soon as we get the city to approve.
Oh, that's gonna be soon.
Fiscal allocation 3.2, current forecasted expenditure will be around 2.7. It's gonna span to next year. That's for the overlays and chip seal. No, this is for the chip seal. Again, this is in progress. Everything looks good. Allocation 2.4. We intend to spend about $2 million on this project. This covers about first phase. That's the fall of this year. We covered about 24 miles, and the second phase would be next year, in 2019. That covers about another 24 miles.
You know, this is pretty broad. I mean, there's no way to tell. You know, all you're giving us is the scope and the schedule, but the schedule doesn't talk about where, the budget, you know, it's kind of, you're just sort of giving us a broad general where we're at type of thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
We got a specific one in email.
Yeah.
We can go specific then.
No, we got one. We got an email on it last week.
Okay, and north,
this is a big one.
Street, we're rescoping the project, and we
to add the 5
I've directed Corps Engineering to give me a scope and fee with the new changes. The acquisition of the ultimate right-of-way, which we discussed at the last board meeting. So that's, the design still would be at 30%, or start from that point, move forward. Budget-wise, we have 2.2 allocated for this fiscal year. I don't anticipate we spend more than $1 million this fiscal year on this project. 4th Street reconstruction. Just for city map. Stop me if you have questions.
You got 2 minutes.
Okay.
No.
I'm just kidding, Sam. Come on.
Got the timer
Just
on?
a little pressure on you, man.
11 and 12E, okay, that's way out there, okay.
Yes, it's city
In the east.
40th, but.
Yeah, county,
Yeah.
yeah, city 40th, yeah.
Down 30%. Anticipate that the bid date will be next year, or the fall of next year. Again, allocation will have 1.2. I don't foresee we spend much of it this fiscal year. This is a Fortune Road. This is from South Frontage Road. That's some progress. Frontage Road to Foothills. We already bid this project. Is under construction. I anticipate completion of this project too soon. We're right on with the budget. We're good as far as budget-wise. 14th from Avenue D to Avenue A. That's with overlay. Already would bid this project. Anticipate completion of this project in January of 19. Budget-wise, we're right on target. Now we get into the signals, traffic intersections.
That'd be nice.
County
Yeah, that
15th
would
and
be
Avenue
nice.
D, Avenue A. This under study. We're almost done with the draft DCR for this this intersection. Let's stay on this one. Engineer has recommended that we proceed with signals for this intersection.
Widen. There's some turning lanes in there.
Yeah, there would be some turning lanes on that.
You will construct turnout lanes?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
You plan to construct turning lanes?
Yes,
At the
yes,
same
there'll
time?
be turning lanes.
Right hand or both?
We'll pretty much preserve the ultimate footprint for the intersection, giving the
So
classification.
they probably just right-hand turn lanes?
Right, there'll be.
There's 2 canals in there. That's
That'll help a lot.
We have an exclusive ride going south, turning west.
going north, turning west.
Engler and 16th.
Oh, yeah.
That's in progress. It's at the 60% stage.
What is the traffic calming?
We'll have signals. We'll have an exclusive right turn lane
Signals,
on
anything
16th Street,
mitigate.
going south and Engler. We'll have some access management changes too at this intersection.
That look cracked.
So this at the 60% stage. We're just starting there.
Is that actually a road? Looks more like a cracked arch.
I know, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like.
Let's just see.
Will be rehabbed and will be resurfaced when we're done.
That'll be good too. Those are good projects.
Yeah, this is a good project. County 14th, Somerton.
Yeah.
In progress, I believe it's at, they just finished the 60%. Over 48th, that's almost done. It's 95% constructed. That's almost a completed project. Avenue B and 5th Street, same situation.
That's just a crosswalk, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
West Side
pages.
crosswalk.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what, the newspaper's leaving? See, this is what you did, right?
See you later. Have fun at your
Yeah.
one.
Come on now.
All right, this is pretty much captures what we already
Yeah, I know.
presented information, as far as bid dates,
Good.
schedules, scope. Budget-wise, I believe we'll meet the budget on this project. Martinez Lake, that project's been rescoped to include Red Cloud Mine Road, and
Got it.
so that's still in the progress. We have received the 15%, but we haven't seen the 30% yet. We're doing some utility relocation, Walton Mohawk Power. We're going to be doing some utility relocation that's been set in motion, and we have met on site. That's going to happen. It's going to relocate roughly about 1.2 miles of power lines, but we have a total of 2 miles to relocate. But until we finish the right-of-way acquisition, there are issues with state land and U.S. Bureau of Lands and all that. So we have still some right-of-way items not finished on this project, Martinez Lake. They tell me this is scheduled to bid in May of next year. Personally, I don't believe that's going to happen. But that's a big project in weight-wise.
Yeah.
That's a $23 million project. Martinez Lake and Red Cloud.
Yeah, the newspaper just left at the important part.
Yeah.
There's our sewer project, remember 23 million?
Well,
A lot of the funding coming from the federal side.
Yeah.
This-
Better.
Yeah.
Our share, I think, is 2.3 million.
Yeah, it's about 90% fed, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's pretty much captures what I had just explained.
Is there a reason why you're including Red Cloud Road?
That's the
I haven't signed
federal
it.
highway, the decision to combine those two projects.
The federal?
So the Fed.
Okay.
Yeah, was not our decision. We're ready to go with the Martinez Lake, but they said, no, let's combine the two.
Okay, thank you.
Which is good.
Flood control, we have two key projects, Smucker and the Foothills. Again, as far as the Smucker, this is the Smucker Park project.
Could you go back, Sammy?
Yes.
I thought that our part was about 8 or 9 million. You have it at 4.7. It's about half.
That's about a year.
The budget.
That's what, it's a year.
So it's during this budget year?
This budget.
Okay, and the remainder in the following.
Right.
Thank you.
Smucker Park, again, this is, the design is almost complete. We're getting a lot of the comments addressed. The comments coming from the Arizona Water Department Resources, so we need to get those comments addressed. Then we finalize the plans and we go out to bid first quarter of next year.
Will that have anything to do, will it inhibit the park at all? Will it?
During construction or after?
Yeah.
I mean, during
During
construction,
or-
there'll be some limited use of the park, yes.
Okay.
Yes. But after the construction is done, a lot of these things, because a lot of
Needs to walk.
the work is
Different.
being done on the northern part of the
Okay,
site.
got it, okay.
It's a good sized project. Again, we're gonna need the city approval of this, so there's that task to be
Still?
accomplished,
Okay.
yes. The big thing is, we had allocated 4.7 this year, this fiscal year, but I don't anticipate we spending much of it. So as you can see, there's a good chunk of carryovers from the project going to next year.
Excuse me again, Mr. Chair, Sammy, does this retention basin, will it be used for athletics or
No.
detention basin? I know, it'll be a detention basin, but is it also going to be like the one on 8th Street where they use it for soccer fields as well?
Oh, multi-use.
Is any of it going to be of use to anyone?
No, it's gonna be deep. That's something that we still need to finalize with the city, what they want. because that needs to need to be maintained and other things. So
Oh, it's
they
gonna
said
be-
they'd like it to be grassed.
Oh, grassed.
Mhm. And they're providing water to for that. But as far as multi-use, we'd be open. But you know, as far as fencing, will be fenced.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
The foothills area drainage is under construction. That's a good size project. It's 4 point something million. We're better than, I would say, 30% complete with the construction. So work in progress. Anticipate completing this project by the end of March, April of next year. No budget issues. I think we're gonna meet the target as far as the budget. Thanks. Did I meet the 7-minute?
Close.
Okay, you've met it. Sammy, thank you very much. 37 slides.
Any suggestions? I'll
Yeah,
take.
it was a good record right there.
Yeah.
You know?
That was fast.
It was fast.
If you'd like to see certain things, I will, the next
No,
status
next time you
updates.
have like a PowerPoint, give me a copy so that I kind of get a sense of where you're at.
Oh, you didn't get copies
I
through the
didn't.
system?
I didn't have it on the.
They're on.
Well, I didn't find it. It's okay. Okay, that's what I get for asking, you know, for the flash drive instead of getting it from the website.
Yeah, I
The
got it.
website has everything. Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy.
All right, the next item in the agenda
Oh, no.
is the, events and calendar. I know it's adjournment, but,
Oh, dear.
all right,
We're trying to help him hurry along. Slow it down.
okay.
Boy, do you have
The next
something
item is, the report. Lynn, Pancrazy, Supervisor
I know.
Pancrazy, begin by giving us a summary of your activities of the last 2 weeks.
I went to a DES informational forum and at Goodwill and I learned a great deal about lots of programs that are being offered through the state of Arizona. I went to my, hold on.
What?
I know, I didn't get to write it down. I had a board meeting for the National Heritage Area, and then I went to the reception for Charles Flynn, where they named the river walk, the Charles Flynn Memorial, not memorial, the Charles Flynn River Walk. And let's see. I was in the parade. I went to the parade. There were so many people alongside at the parade. It was just amazing. I was really, really pleased with the number of people who came out for our folks in the military. The 15th, I led the CSA Medium County Caucus meeting and attended the CSA Board of Directors meeting, where at the end, Russell McLeod is now the new president of CSA. He was
Seated.
Was seated. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. I attended the board's equalization hearing, and that's about it.
All right, Supervisor McLeod.
Let's see. Yep, I also attended the CSA board meeting.
Where you were seated.
Where you were seated as
Yes, I am now the CSA president. And point of note, our own recorder, Robin Poquette, will be seated as the ACO president. So we are just a couple of weeks away from total domination.
We're a couple of weeks away from total domination.
Long in planning. No, actually, we were surprised. We figured it out a couple of years ago. No planning at all. It just worked out that way.
Yeah, sure.
Attended the YRMC Foundation breakfast, and I was privileged to be able to present at the Tuesday and Wednesday Lunch and Learn. Our county folks that attended that, they were great. They were a great audience, had a lot of fun with that presentation. Also attended the Veterans Day Parade. As Supervisor Pancrazy noted, it was a great crowd. It was cool, almost cold and windy, and that didn't deter anybody, so appreciate the public's support. And also attended a planning meeting for a new Veterans Court. I want to applaud County Attorney John Smith, really pushing that along, and I think it's going to be a great advancement for our community. So, yep, fingers crossed, but thank you for your work on that, John. And that's what I've got. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Porches?
Not much, just been attending census meetings, so that's pretty much it.
All right.
I did your census. Bad joke.
I thought that was part, that's my job.
Bad jokes are your job.
All right. I attended the parade.
We'll have
which
to
is
separate them there.
Yeah, that's right. No, there's no point.
Then you'll just get it from both sides.
You already made me forget what I was going to say. So, there's no point. Oh, go ahead, Susan. I'll start thinking about what I was going to say. I went to the parade and then I stopped. Oh, don't forget to mention that tomorrow, I need, you're probably going to be there, that the swearing-in ceremony for the mayor of Somerton.
Somerton,
It's
yeah.
tomorrow afternoon, and
I'm going to that too.
if you can, please attend.
better
I'm not
post
sure I'll
that.
be able to make it. I got a board meeting.
Might want to post it.
Another board meeting. You may want to post that. Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Susan. I'm not going to the Arizona-Mexico Commission meeting, and you have graciously transferred my registration and reservations to Yuma,
Yuna.
the new executive director of the Greater Yuma Port Authority, which I also attended, Greater Yuma Port Authority meeting.
Retreat.
You see, if I start thinking, I'll remember now. You threw me off track. But anyway, so Susan, you're next.
Yes. So Vita George, as the chairman mentioned, is the new executive director for the Greater Yuma Port Authority. Paul Melcher and I will be meeting with her this afternoon to go through the office downstairs that we're providing to GYPA.
They call it the dungeon.
As well as the website, and making sure she feels really welcome here at the county administration building. And
Susan, before
she's
you leave that subject, I want to tell you though, I mean, they call it the dungeon for a reason. You were trying to punish someone, weren't you? When you gave him that office down below? No? Darn it. That's what I told them.
We do know that the GYPA executive director will be spending a lot of time traveling and going to visit various sites, so they wouldn't really spend a lot of time in an office.
Well, not very.
And then Thanksgiving is this week, so county offices will be closed this Thursday and Friday, and hopefully you all have a great Thanksgiving holiday. That's it.
The comment that Supervisor McLeod made about the office is that he wouldn't be spending any time in that office himself if he had that office. So, anyway, hope you're a little better to Buona.
I said it
than
quietly
to
for a reason.
Well, nothing is here is private, so. All right, anything else?
Russell? Mr. Chairman, I think that we should wish everybody out there in
Happy
audience
Thanksgiving.
land a happy Thanksgiving, and hope you get to spend it with your family and your friends.
And be safe, okay? And be safe, and hopefully all the military people can spend, a good time, whatever they may be. We want to thank them for their service before we leave today. Thank you very much. And that would be the end of this.